Good evening. Thank you for joining Lewis University's television live election night coverage. Today is Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. I'm Margarita Kremitis.
And I'm Matt Mohan.
And we begin with our election night coverage. It is finally the night we've been waiting for. The presidential race is about to end. Due to the increase in voting by mail, election results may be delayed due to a longer counting process. Right now is an unprecedented time, and tonight could really go either way. States like Florida, Arizona, and North Carolina could have their ballots counted early enough for tonight, especially if a candidate wins by a big margin. Other states could take until the end of the week.
Yes, it's extremely interesting. We want to thank all of you for joining us here tonight on LUTN. As Margarita said, election night is finally here, the moment we've all been waiting for. Just the months and years of anticipation and build-up are finally here, and we'll finally have some semblance, some idea of concrete of who may be ahead in this election. We currently have results coming in now, which we will get to in a little bit. But as I said, I mean, the voters finally making a decision on what issues really are impacting them most, whether it be healthcare, the economy, coronavirus. I mean, all the civil unrest and protests that we've had over these last few months. In the wake of the George Floyd killing, it's all coming to hopefully coming to fruition tonight, and we'll have some idea of who is going to be ahead in this election. We do have some early preliminary data in terms of state callings right now. Right now, we have 2 states that have officially been called. Check that 3. We've got Indiana, the state of Indiana, projected to go to Donald Trump. That is the home state of Mike Pence. Donald Trump campaigning there. It was very not a big surprise there to see that Donald Trump is winning in Indiana. You've got Vermont and the District of Columbia have also been called. Former Vice President Joe Biden expected to carry Vermont and the District of Columbia. That leaves our electoral total right now. Trump trailing with 18 electoral votes to Joe Biden's 30 electoral votes. But I mean, obviously we have a lot of key callings and key polling data that will be streaming in throughout the night. We just had several states actually just have their polls closed as well at 7 p.m. States such as Illinois, and then, of course, key battleground states, namely Pennsylvania. Florida was called about an hour ago as well in terms of their polling closing. So, I mean, really, we're starting to get a lot of information, and we'll have some idea of who will be pulling ahead in this election. Right now, to just run through the electoral map right now, Donald Trump with a slim lead, a 0.1% lead in Florida, currently showing 9,000 vote lead for Donald Trump in Florida. That's very interesting. That's a very key state in terms of how this election will turn out. There are several battleground states that are very important that Donald Trump win, such as Virginia. Georgia has also had their polls closed, and we're starting to get preliminary information from there as well. Ohio, we are starting to get information from Ohio as well. Joe Biden currently with a big lead in Ohio of nearly 3,000 votes. But, it is very interesting, all these different states, all these different states have so many different regulations and rules in terms of how these absentee ballots will be counted. A state like Ohio, for example, are having a majority of their absentee ballots already counted. So right now we see a big lead, huge lead for Joe Biden in Ohio. That could get a lot closer as we progress throughout the night. As we've seen, Margarita, these absentee ballots, it seems like Democratic supporting candidates have shown a very high likelihood to vote by mail. Republicans not so much, and that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's funny you say that Republicans are more likely to go vote in person. This could be due to the president's views on mail-in ballots.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Donald Trump has really been bashing the whole mail-in ballot system. He's really called it. I mean, he's kind of completely illegitimizing it, and his supporters seem to definitely be following suit in that regard. But again, that does affect a lot of the preliminary information that we'll see throughout the night. Right now, a lot of the battleground states are very, very close. Very, very close, and we're getting reports from Oklahoma now as well. Donald Trump actually projected to win in Oklahoma. So as we go throughout the night, we will have you live. We are also going to have several people joining us throughout the broadcast tonight. We've got Angel Olivo, our social media analyst. He will be joining us in just a bit to give us. Actually, we'll go live to Angel right now. Angel, thank you so much for joining us. Let's see what he's got to say.
Thank you so much, Matt. As Matt mentioned, we will be covering the election night very closely. I'm Angel Olivo. I'll be covering the social media side of things. We do have a couple of tweets from some key battleground states coming up. First, we want to check out what CNN is reporting as the most pressing, important issues that voters are reporting now that exit polls are coming in. We have the coronavirus at number 3, surprisingly, pandemic. The coronavirus coming in as the number 3 issue that voters are most worried about, or the reasons why, what they're really looking for in a new president. We also have the coronavirus trailing racial equality, as well as the economy coming in at number 1 with 34%. Tied for 4th and 5th is healthcare, of course, with 11%, and crime and safety, as Matt mentioned. We have had a crazy year of some unrest. So we definitely want to see some voters definitely want to see the next president address these issues. These are the top 5 most important issues coming in. We're seeing election night and election day trending on Twitter as well. Here we have some live footage for the first time, apparently, from inside a mail-in ballot processing center in Pennsylvania. We're getting reports that workers there are working 24 hours around the clock to count these mail-in ballots that are coming in record numbers. We do have some footage of that. Very interesting. I know I have never seen an inside of where they process the mail-in voting, mail-in ballots, but yeah, something to look to as we're, like I said, as we're receiving these mail-in ballots in record numbers. Pennsylvania also being a key battleground state that is key in winning these. Now I'm going to toss it back to the desk for more coverage on the election.
Thank you, Angel. I think it was so cool how media is allowed to show the ballot counting process. And I just want to say thank you to all the workers that are involved with voting this year, our poll watchers and election judges. I know there are several students out tonight volunteering as election judges, so thank you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Margarita. So many people have put in so much work to make sure that this election goes on accurately. People volunteering, people working so hard to count all these absentee ballots because we have so many, and it's led to such a high turnout in this election. One thing I wanted to mention that Angel brought up that I found very interesting was, in fact, how how the voters coming out of these polls have ranked the issues that are most important to them. Specifically, a lot of them saying that the economy is taking precedence and is important and affecting the way they're voting over the coronavirus. I mean, to me, that seems like very important. Seems like a very important issue in terms of what voters will be looking at and choosing to decide each candidate.
I definitely think economy is super important right now. It is something that affects all of us and something that we've all been affected by. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's such a distinction in terms of the decisions that people made. I mean, I think this election really comes down to how people decide how they think we should proceed in these next coming years. I mean, to me, it seems like there's 2 ways to go about it. We can either continue and contain the virus as much as we possibly can, or we can reopen the economy. And it seems, showing now that people, choosing that the economy having, placing a greater importance on how how much the economy should improve as we go forward. Especially because it seems like a Donald Trump campaign would be more in favor of reopening the economy to a greater extent. Maybe the Joe Biden campaign would be representing, more containing the virus. So it'll be interesting to see how that affects the voting data as we progress throughout the night.
Definitely, I agree.
Yeah, definitely. We continue to get more polling data as we go throughout the night. Key battleground state, Texas, currently a big lead for Joe Biden. But as we mentioned earlier, all these states, have such different rules and guidelines in terms of how they are counting these votes. So you see a state like Texas, and you see such a big lead for Joe Biden, but a state like Texas is counting all their absentee ballots first before they count any in-person ballots. So you should expect throughout the night that Donald Trump will close the gap. In a state like Texas, at least. A very key state to watch for also is Florida. 29 electoral votes in Florida, and really, it's you look at it, and Donald Trump has to win several of these battleground states in order to remain competitive. And a state like Florida, North Carolina, currently Virginia is showing leads for Donald Trump in those states. So it should be interesting in terms of how these different polling results will affect the outcome of the election. But once again, we just want to thank all of you joining us on LUTN tonight for our coverage of election night. We'll be having several people joining us throughout the night. We have Lloyd, our correspondent, who will be joining us live from a Zoom Democratic Watch Party. We'll also be having Luis Chavez live from a Republican Watch Party. And later tonight, we'll also have a professor of law from the University of Illinois, Chicago, Dr. Steve Schwinn. He will be joining us periodically throughout the night. So we have a lot of key information that we'll be getting to throughout the night. Right now, though, this past week I had the opportunity to speak with Dr. Stephen Nora. He's an associate professor of political science here at the university. And he really gave a lot of insightful information. And for those of you joining us, and you may be wondering, have a lot of questions about the Electoral College and the whole process of how it's done and how it determines the the outcome of the election. I had the opportunity to sit down with Dr. Nora, and he gave us a very, very insightful explanation of how exactly it works. Have a look at this in Dr. Nora's description.
Yeah, so when the Constitution was written back in 1787, the framers decided not to elect the chief executive with the popular vote. So instead, they came up with this system called the Electoral College. And the way that it breaks down is that each state is allocated a certain number of electors based on the size of that state's congressional delegation. So each state automatically gets at least 3 electors because each state is guaranteed 2 senators and 1 representative in the House. And then as a state is larger, they get more House representatives. Therefore, they also get more Electoral College representatives. And it's really up to these states to allocate the electors however they want, but 48 of the states determine their Electoral College electors based on the popular vote outcome within a state. So whichever candidate gets more votes than the other candidates within a particular state, they get all of that state's electoral house or Electoral College electors. So for example, in Illinois has 20 electors because we have 18 representatives and 2 senators. It doesn't matter if Joe Biden wins with 51% of the vote or 70% of the vote, he would receive all 20 of Illinois' electors because that's what Illinois state law says. There are 2 states, this is kind of esoteric trivia, but there are 2 states, Nebraska and Maine, that divide up their electors based on congressional district votes. So you might see on election night, Joe Biden or Donald Trump fighting over the 1st district of Nebraska or the 2nd district of Maine. That's because those individual congressional districts get their own electoral vote. But for 48 of the other states, it's a winner-take-all system by by state. And once the electors are decided, they meet together in mid-December, and they're the actual body that will elect the president.
We want to thank you. We want to thank Dr. Nora so much for reaching out and really being a part of our election night coverage. We'll be speaking with him periodically throughout the night. We'll be showing sound bites from that interview. He gave a lot of really great information. That was a great explanation right there in terms of how this election will unfold, because as you can see, it is decided by electoral vote. So we could have a situation where Joe Biden wins the popular vote but loses in the Electoral College, which in fact is what happened in 2016 in when Donald Trump lost the popular vote to Hillary Clinton.
Mm-hmm. And on our map, we are seeing on the east side that we are blue. In states like Vermont, we've had Biden as a projected winner, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and as well as DC. Oklahoma right now, we have Trump as a projected winner.
Yeah, and we'll see this throughout the night. You know, as the night unfolds, we'll start on the East Coast. Most of those polls will close, and then we'll sweep across the country, and we'll start to get more polls closing in the next hour or so from the Midwest. States like Colorado, a key battleground state, will be closing in an hour. Illinois also will be getting preliminary information from Illinois as well on how that state is turning out. But right now, as it stands, currently the states that have been called include Oklahoma. They include Oklahoma, Indiana, and as well as Kentucky for Donald Trump. States like Vermont being carried currently by Joe Biden. The electoral total right now, as it stands, 30 electoral votes for Joe Biden and 26 for Donald Trump. Remember, it is 270 electoral votes are needed to clinch the presidential nomination. Mm-hmm. And we're also getting information. Polls have just closed in Pennsylvania right now. Currently, a huge lead in Pennsylvania for Joe Biden. But again, these early results should be taken with a grain of salt, especially with Pennsylvania, as well as a state like Ohio, counting their absentee ballots first. And that's going to be a trend that we see throughout the night, where some states are going to have huge leads early on for Joe Biden. In the case that they count absentee ballots first, it's most likely that early on it would be a big lead for the Democrats in a state like that, whereas opposed if they wait to count absentee ballots until later, we could see Donald Trump with a big lead in key states. Right now, with early results, Joe Biden leading in Pennsylvania, leading in Ohio, but all other key states, Battleground State, Virginia, Donald Trump leading in Virginia by quite a hefty margin right now, about 200,000 votes, the lead there. And we're also getting very, very early results from North Carolina as well. North Carolina currently the lead to Donald Trump. An important state to watch throughout the night is Florida. We should expect by the end of the night that we should have a majority of the Florida count. And depending on how Florida swings, we could have an idea of who's going to win this election, especially if Joe Biden wins in that state. Currently, Donald Trump being shown as the leader in Florida right now by a very, very slim margin, just about 0.8%.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting as well for these other battleground states, going to see who wins. Some of the other battleground states that we have is Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, Iowa, just to name a few.
Yeah, and really it was interesting because a lot of these states have changed in these last couple of weeks leading up to the election. A lot of states, especially up north, like Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, their polls will be closing at 8 p.m. Central. We'll get results from there. But I mean, really, a couple weeks ago, you look at polls from a state like Michigan or Minnesota, and it was showing a decided advantage for Joe Biden in those states. But leading up to the election, those states have changed and have become, battleground states, which is something you really don't see a lot. Is an underdog in an election closing the gap towards being being closer in terms of winning the overall election. Throughout the night, though, we will be having several reporters joining us. As I mentioned, Lloyd will be joining us, and she did a news package recently talking about the Women League of Voters and getting information out to encourage voter engagement in this very, very crucial and important election.
This year's upcoming elections are very heated and are being referred to as the biggest election in history. Citizens are constantly being encouraged to register to vote and hit the polls. A program called Stroll to the Polls, created by the Naperville League of Women Voters, has been doing its part to inform communities about voting.
I think there's just so much of a higher awareness now anyway with this particular election that the League of Women Voters has really concentrated on getting information out, such as, virtually through our social media and other resources. So it's kind of like we are having a virtual stroll to the polls with everybody.
The League of Women Voters has created a program to encourage voters to participate in the upcoming election. Stroll to the Polls is a program that encourages local high schoolers to go door to door and pass out bipartisan information about early voting.
Typically what happens is the students gather together on, say, a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, and they go out with maps to certain precincts, and they attach to the doors or talk to the residents about information about how to vote and where to vote, or how to early vote, and where their polling places are.
This year, due to the coronavirus pandemic, going door to door to give voters bipartisan information is now impossible. The program has made several changes to protect the public health and still inform the community.
And the turnout really measurably increases by anywhere from 7 to 14% in those low turnout districts. Currently, the groups that are doing it up in the northern suburbs are just, they've created either door hangers or sticker type, those sticker sheets they can put on doors. So it's really important to measure that so that you are actually having effect.
Statistics show that Stroll to the Polls has had a positive effect on voting turnout. In the communities that participated from 2016 to 2020, there was 100% primary increase and 10% general increase.
If you go to this site, illinoisvoterguide.org, you will be able to put in just your address, and that will pull up your sample ballot. And then you can go in there and look at all sorts of information about the candidates, from president on down to your local county auditor. And lots of times it'll have a Q&A that the candidate has answered for us, or even a forum video if there has been a forum for that area.
The League of Women Voters is campaigning to have citizens get to the polls early to vote through social media posts and to be educated on the issues that affect their area.
I encourage you to get out and vote, educate yourself with the Illinois Voter Guide, and encourage all of your classmates and everyone you are associated with to register. In Illinois, you can register right up to the date, November 3rd.
For LUTN News, this is Lloyd.
Thank you, Mayette, for covering the League of Women Voters in their goal to create more voter engagement. When we return, we have an interview with Noah Grunberg.
Jordan knows he shouldn't eat this entire bowl of nachos, but tonight he's earned that right. Because a few hours ago, in the middle of happy hour, he recognized a sign. Not from the gods or a bolt of lightning, but from a double heart, a kissy face, and a fourth ha in ha ha ha. That's when Jordan knew he was buzzed. So when it was time to go, he got a ride home instead of driving. Be a legend like Jordan. Recognize your buzzed warning signs and get a ride home. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
If I could go back and change it all, I would. I think I'm gonna miss you the most. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Or maybe it's just the little moments. If I could go back and change it all, if I could go back, I would. But I can't.
So, I got this new family, and I don't know what it is about this one, but she can't seem to put down that toy all day long. Tap, 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 tap. Oh, and she even talks to it. She talks to that more than she talks to him. What's up, bro? Nice shirt. Who's she talking to? Her mom? She talks to her mom a lot.
Recently just came in, Tennessee. Projected winner is Trump. Currently Trump has 72.4% with 255,651 votes. Biden trailing behind with 26.4% and 93,369 votes. LUTN reporter Lloyd interviewed Nora, the first woman chairperson to lead the Will County Democratic Central Committee, on her feelings about being the first woman chairperson and the election. Here's what she had to say.
Being elected the first woman of the Will County Democratic Central Committee was an absolute honor. We are seeing a lot more women being elected to and assuming leadership roles, statewide, nationwide, worldwide. And, you know, it's about time. We represent half of the population, and representation matters. I've worked very hard over the past 6 years in the Will County community, working on elections with candidates from the municipal up to the federal level. And I think that I've demonstrated a commitment to organizing within the community effectively, building bridges, building coalitions, and becoming the chair of the party has been so exciting, so much fun, and really just it's a part of the work that I love to do. My focus as the chairperson of the Will County Democratic Central Committee is first and foremost to bring the community together, to make sure that all of these different communities feel that they have a voice and that they are welcome to engage in the Democratic Party. Providing opportunities to engage, ways for people to communicate with each other. And with COVID-19, the Democratic, our typical ground game focused mostly on door knocking. We don't do that in the same way that we once did. And it's really changed the way that we communicate. So we're relying a lot more on digital aspects of communications. We're using a lot of phone banks, text banking, and we've had to pivot, but we're still bringing people together. We're still communicating with people every day through multiple means, and there's a lot of excitement around the Democratic Party, and I'm really proud to be a part of bringing people together. The upcoming election is so important for so many reasons. They always say that the Democratic Party is a big tent. And that's because there are so many important issues. And one of the reasons why I feel like it's hard for the Democrats to coalesce sometimes behind issues and campaigns, because all of these issues are important. But right now, I think that we are really unified behind the fact that the current presidential administration is not good for most Americans. We are worried about healthcare. We are worried about workers' rights. We're worried about women's reproductive rights. We're worried about climate change. We're worried about the handling or mishandling of the COVID-19 crisis. And I think that being able to agree that all these issues are important, but the critical aspect is people's health and safety right now. And this is our opportunity to elect leadership that will help make positive change. And, you know, that's really, I think, what the focus, not just for myself and my executive board, but, you know, all of us together here in Will County and in the Democratic Party writ large. In terms of doing things differently than my predecessors, you know, I think embracing technology has really been an important factor of, you know, the type of leadership that I want to bring to the party, leveling the playing field and making it easier for people to organize and bringing them together around the issues. You know, this is a volunteer position, and anyone that wants to undertake this position, they're giving up a lot of their time and their energy, and they're bringing their skills to the table. I really appreciate everything that my predecessors did to continue building the party. And I really appreciate having the opportunity to, you know, share some of my vision and my goals and see if people are interested in working in that way. But I have so many great people around me with awesome ideas. And it's been such a pleasure to be able to give them support so that they can execute their ideas and do things their way. I think it's really important to be collaborative and cooperative. And it's really exciting to be able to provide supports to the community so that they can take their ideas and run with them. Not my practice to prognosticate when it comes to elections. I think we learned in 2016 that relying on polls and data can only take you so far. There's always that X factor, the unpredictable nature of human beings. And while the incredible early voting and vote by mail turnout numbers, I think is a hopeful sign. I refuse to make any predictions because I know how unpredictable this can be, but I have a lot of hope.
I definitely agree with Nora. Community is super important right now, and we definitely have to come together. These are all issues that we are all experiencing together, and I feel like that is very important.
Yeah, that was a great interview from Ms. Grunberg there. And as you said, Margarita, she's doing such a great job of cultivating a community and really, you know, finding ways to get people to get to the polls and make sure they vote. You know, it's so hard to stay in touch with people, you know, these past few months with social distancing, with the coronavirus. Yeah. It's really forced people to really be creative in the way that they communicate with other people. Mm-hmm. We have things like Zoom, and obviously Ms. Grunberg has done a fabulous job in terms of you know, really increasing civic engagement in her community, and you know, she's really just doing a fantastic job. Mm-hmm. Right now, I think we're going to check in with Angel Oliva once again. We're going to have our social media update. Angel, what's going on?
So once again, Matt, thank you so much for those updates, Margarita. We're seeing Vote 2020 trending on Twitter. We do have a picture here shared by Complex. Breaking news showing that a federal judge has ruled that the United States Postal Service sweep their facilities to turn in any mailed-in ballots that have been coming in, again, in an effort to get the most comprehensive view of how states are voting this election. Again, we have seen a record number of mail-in ballots throughout the United States, as well as early voting. So we are going to keep it lighthearted today with some of these tweets. Also share some very important information. We have a video from Allendale, Michigan, one of our key battleground states. Early in the day, obviously, showing a line around the building. As I mentioned, early voting has seen numbers, record-breaking numbers throughout the United States. But in particular, this video coming in from Michigan with hashtag Vote 2020, hashtag Election Day. A lot of people sharing their videos of their experiences throughout the United States. We definitely want viewers to understand that we might not have a complete picture of the projected winner by the end of the night, but stay with us for important updates and more coverage on the election 2020. Now I'm going to toss it right back to the desk.
Yeah, great stuff, Angel. Really appreciate it, and really crazy the voter turnout we've had in this election, unprecedented. Coming into today, we had over 100 million in the past election, and that's just before. This election, when we have millions more votes, hundreds of millions more votes to count today. So it's really, I guess, one positive thing you can take from these last 4 years with Donald Trump, if you can say that, is a big increase in civic engagement, political awareness, and we'll see what this political awareness will lead to throughout the night.
Definitely. We will welcome Steve Schwinn, law professor at University of Illinois, Chicago, who has his thoughts on important election topics after the break. Was that?
Maybe he's really focused.
Hey, Michael. Michael. Maybe he likes spinning the wheels.
Maybe he just loves trucks.
Maybe he's just being a boy.
Preoccupation with objects is one early sign of autism. Learn the others today. The sooner it's diagnosed, the better.
So, I got this new family. And I don't know what it is about this one, but she can't seem to put down that toy all day long. Tap, 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 tap. Oh, and she even talks to it. She talks to that more than she talks to him. What's up, bro? Nice shirt. Who's she talking to? Her mom? She talks to her mom a lot.
Jordan knows he shouldn't eat this entire bowl of nachos, but tonight he's earned that right. Because a few hours ago, in the middle of happy hour, he recognized a sign. Not from the gods or a bolt of lightning, but from a double heart, a kissy face, and a fourth ha in ha ha ha. That's when Jordan knew he was buzzed. So when it was time to go, he got a ride home instead of driving. Be a legend like Jordan. Recognize your buzzed warning signs and get a ride home. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
If I could go back and change it all, I would. I think I'm gonna miss you the most. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Maybe it's just the little moments. If I could go back and change it all, if I could go back, I would. But I can't.
Maybe he's really focused.
Hey, Michael. Michael. Maybe he likes spinning the wheels.
Maybe he just loves trucks.
Maybe he's just being a boy.
Preoccupation with objects is one early sign of autism. Learn the others today. The sooner it's diagnosed, the better.
So, I got this new family, and I don't know what it is about this one, but she can't seem to put down that toy all day long. Tap, 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 tap. Oh, and she even talks to it. She talks to that more than she talks to him. What's up, bro? Nice shirt. Who's she talking to? Her mom? She talks to her mom a lot.
LUTN's coverage of the 2020 election. A lot of polling information has been streaming in throughout the night. We'll run through some states because there have been quite a bit of calls so far in terms of states that each candidate has won. So I'll run through them each individually right now. Currently, the state of Oklahoma is showing that Donald Trump will win in the state of Oklahoma. 7 electoral votes there, an 8 percentage point lead. They've called that one. Moving over to the right as we sweep across the South, Arkansas, no surprise there, projected a win for Donald Trump in Arkansas. Also in the South, only 1% reporting at Mississippi and Alabama. Each of those states reported as a win for President Donald Trump. Tennessee also projected to Donald Trump. Kentucky as well as West Virginia and South Carolina also have been called in favor of Donald Trump. Interesting development right now. We'll see if this changes throughout the evening, but Virginia, very important state, Virginia, very important swing state. Joe Biden has won in Virginia. And Margarita, it's very interesting how this election is unfolding right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially Alabama also has Donald Trump with 48.4%, 5,183 votes. And Texas is blue. We have Joe Biden in the lead with 50.1%, a total of 3,100,811 votes with Donald Trump. Behind with 48.6% and 3,007,851 votes.
Yeah, Texas, very, very big surprise right there. That was a very interesting state going into the election. I mean, Texas, it's been decades since Texas has gone blue. That would be almost unforeseen at this point if the current trend that we are seeing continues into fruition and Joe Biden would hold on to that state. I mean, it's really also dependent a lot on how the absentee ballots are being counted. Again, I keep going back to that, but it is important to note that a lot of these states, you're seeing an influx of absentee ballots being counted first, so that could explain why Texas may be going in favor of Joe Biden at the moment. That could be subject to change throughout the night. But as we said, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, South Carolina, West Virginia, all these southern states all going in favor of Donald Trump right now. However, Joe Biden has a recorded win in Illinois, Virginia, New Jersey, these highly populated states on the eastern seaboard. Right now, currently, if we look at our electoral count, remember, as Dr. Nora said earlier, you need 270 electoral votes in order to clinch the presidency. Right now, our count, 85 for Joe Biden, 61 electoral votes for Trump. So 85 to 61, the lead for Joe Biden in the Electoral College count right now. However, several important states still to come. Pennsylvania, only 7% reporting in Pennsylvania. That's going to be, crucial in terms of determining the outcome of this election. Pennsylvania, Ohio currently is only 53% reporting in Ohio. A current lead current lead for Donald Trump there. I'm hearing right now that we are about to be joined by a very special guest right now. It is going to be a professor of law at the University of Illinois Chicago. It's Professor Steve Schwinn is about to be joining us live right now, and here he is. Dr. Schwinn, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. What are your initial reactions right now to these polls? What do you make of everything? Is there anything that stands out to you so far?
Well, I don't see anything that stands out so far. It's still early in the process. I'm glad that we didn't see any electoral interference at the polls, at least not to a major degree today. There were some reports of different kinds of shenanigans coming out of different locations, but nothing like what many of us expected at the polls. And so it seemed to be a relatively normal kind of peaceful election, at least so far. We'll see what happens as the returns continue to come in.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully everything stays peaceful and civil throughout the night. Currently, one state that really jumps out to me is Texas. It's a lead for Joe Biden currently in Texas. How do you think, why do you think that is currently the case? Why does Joe Biden have that lead? Do you think it's purely from a standpoint that they're counting absentee ballots first? What are you hearing about Texas?
It's really hard to say. It's such an unusual election with so many votes coming in through the mail-in system, and counting those votes and then counting the returns through the ordinary election. That combined with the unprecedented participation by voters in this election, I think makes it really hard to know exactly what's going on. And I think we're just going to have to wait and see until more returns come in from a place like Texas as to which way the state seems to be swinging. The Democrats thought they could put Texas in play as early as this election, and demographic changes in the state suggest that they will be able to put the state in play, if not in this election, certainly in the next election or the election after that. Now, whether they can do it in this election, I think, is going to depend largely on turnout. And we've seen this unprecedented turnout. It's just hard to predict what it's going to mean.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, unprecedented turnout, like unbelievable turnout. Can you just talk a little bit about what you think has contributed to this high turnout, and what do you think it'll mean in terms of the rest of the election?
Yeah, so President Trump, I think, has turned out to be polarizing enough figure that people have decided well in advance of the election that they're either very enthusiastically for him or very enthusiastically against him. And I think that dynamic has driven a lot of the turnout. The get out the vote efforts by both campaigns has been tremendous this cycle as well. And more through electronic media, urging people to get out the vote. And then finally, I think that the opportunities for mail-in voting has allowed us to increase the turnout in the election. It turned out to be much easier for many people to vote through mail-in voting. Now, having said that, we are going to see a number of legal challenges to mail-in voting and different ways of voting. We've already seen many of those challenges, and I expect in the days after the election, we'll see more challenges arise.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is, in terms of the mail-in voting, the Trump campaign has really called has really called to the legitimacy of these mail-in votes. Should there be a situation where, we don't know who the winner of the election will be by the end of tonight, what do you think will happen? Is there any possibility that you think the Supreme Court would decide this election?
That's a great question. I do think there's a possibility that the Supreme Court will weigh in a way that, the Supreme Court doesn't have authority to decide the election, but they can certainly weigh in on the election in a way that looks like they're deciding the election. I'm thinking about the election of 2000, where many see the Supreme Court's involvement in that election as basically throwing the election to Bush. A similar thing could happen in this election. We have a number of cases working their way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court's already decided on a number of cases leading up to the election. And then we have a number of, at least a couple of states where questionable ballots, for example, ballots coming in late or ballots coming in through Texas's drive-through voting system, where those ballots are going to be held aside for potential further litigation, and that litigation could certainly go up to the Supreme Court. How the court decides, I think, then is going to be a big question. We've seen the court tilting toward the conservative side with regard to many of these questions. And with the addition of a Justice Amy Coney Barrett to the court, as she starts to weigh in on these electoral questions, we expect that she will probably align herself with the political conservatives on the court as well. And so to the extent that these questions are going to the Supreme Court, I think we can probably look to conservative outcomes by the court, which is why the Democrats have looked for a really strong election return so that there's no question about the results, that it won't be litigated by the court. And I do think a stronger return for either the Republicans or the Democrats will make it far less likely that the courts will get involved, because the courts will simply say, look, we're just going to let the people decide the election and stay out of it.
What are some more differences you see between this election and previous ones? And do you think this election has had more voter intimidation?
So differences between this election and previous ones, I think that's a really good question. Obviously, COVID is the principal difference between this election and previous ones, and just the way we're voting as a political community. Mail-in voting has gone through the roof. In a number of states, we saw mail-in returns exceeding 100% of total election returns in the 2016 election. And so the opportunity for mail-in voting and people taking advantage of mail-in voting has really changed the dynamic in this election. Voter turnout efforts on election day, I think similarly has really changed the dynamic in this election. And again, I'll go back to a point that I had raised earlier. The polarizing nature of President Trump's presidency has really kind of put people in a position where they're firmly in his camp or firmly against him well before Election Day. And so we have a lot of voter enthusiasm on both sides, and it really is a get out the vote game at that point.
Yeah, there's been a lot of engagement and enthusiasm about this election, and it continues to just be one of the craziest elections ever in so many different ways. We want to thank Dr. Schwinn for joining us. We'll be talking to him throughout the night and getting information, very important information about this election. Right now, though, we're going to shift gears. We have LUTN reporter Emily Kripag is going to show us a news package. She had an interview with an election judge with a lot of the specifics in terms of the mail-in vote ballot verification process. Let's hear what Emily has to say.
As the 2020 election approaches, one way people in Will County are casting their vote this year are through mail-in voting. We had the opportunity to sit down with election judge Chris Showalter to discuss mail-in voting and how anyone can make sure their voice is heard in this election.
As in the case of mail-in ballots, both parties, again, a Republican and Democrat, do this, where they verify together that the ballot style, the precinct is correct, and that this, everything is validated for the process.
Starting in 2010, voters no longer need to submit a reason for why they were voting by mail. 10 years later, in the 2020 primaries, 9.11% of votes came from people who voted by mail. Here's education major Jacqueline Burry to discuss how she voted by mail for this upcoming election.
I do not, at this point, have any concerns about whether or not my ballot will be received or counted. I used the mail-in ballot back in the spring when we were voting for preliminaries and whatnot, and I assumed that it was received and whatnot. Like, I didn't have any issues with mailing it in at that time, so I don't feel any different about mailing it in this time as well.
Prior to November 3rd, a central count takes place in Will County. This means that ballots already received from early mail-in voters are being processed by election judges from the Democratic and Republican parties and members of the Will County Clerk's Office. While the votes themselves are not counted, they are processed and checked.
The signatures on the mail-in ballots are being verified. The ballots are being opened. They're being looked at by the Republican and Democratic representative, and then they're run through by a county clerk office through the vote counting machine.
Voters can keep this process to vote by mail in mind as they register for the upcoming election day, now only a few weeks away. For LUTN, I'm Emily Kripag.
Margarita Matt package.
Thank you, Emily, for informing us about all the ways we can have our voices heard.
All right, right now we're going to be joined by Lloyd live, who is currently attending Congressman Foster's virtual election night party, and she's going to give us some updates right now. Mayette, what's going on?
That question is still outstanding, and I don't have the answer to that at the moment.
Yeah, you gotta wait. Yeah, you gotta wait until they start counting all the votes, right? So, kind of the same with us, but we built up such a large cushion. I mean, it's just unremarkable how many early votes and mail-in votes we had. We had more early votes and mail-in votes this cycle than we had total in 2016.
Yeah, to put it in perspective, in Kendall County, in 2016, there were, call it 2,500 early votes. And in 2018, there were about 3,000. This cycle, there's, over 16,000 vote by mail. So it really is off the charts. And the number of people that were voting in person today, to a precinct, it's off the charts. It's really, really high.
Well, what about Oswego? Isn't that kind of a friendly area?
Yeah, some parts of Oswego, yes, and some parts no. So we'll.
Yeah.
Well,
for those of you who don't know the story of Oswego, several years ago, after years of control by these sort of Tea Party type cabal that was running Oswego, there was a progressive wave, and we got a wonderful progressive mayor and a majority on the council, and then the wave receded in the last election, and it just shows how tough life is out in places like Oswego, right at the boundary of civilization, as they say.
Yeah, it's also a function of the low voter turnout. I mean, we're looking at nationally, everyone.
Wow, that's very interesting stuff. It's interesting to see what the perspective is from the Democratic Party. So many people are really calling this one of the most important elections of our lifetime. In terms of the Democrats have this real fear about Donald Trump and what another 4 years could mean. Should Donald Trump win. We're going to have another update right now on the electoral vote right now. We have some more updates, and right now it's pretty crystal clear how it's going. It's the entire Eastern Seaboard. Eastern Seaboard seems to be going in favor of Joe Biden. Right now, Joe Biden is the winner in Vermont. He's the winner in Massachusetts, as well as Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland. But Joe Biden, the projected winner in all of those states on the Eastern Seaboard. Right now, our current projected electoral total, you can see up at the top of the page right there, 85 to 72, but we're still waiting on information from Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania right now still showing a heavy lead for Joe Biden, but we're still waiting on more accurate poll results to come in throughout the night. But currently Pennsylvania, 72% in favor of Joe Biden, 23% for Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. Ohio, very similar. That state has yet to be called. It is a lead for Joe Biden, but that lead is definitely shrinking in Ohio since the last time we checked it. Another very key state that I think is going to give us a very big insight into who's going to win this election. Take a look at Florida right now. It is 51% Donald Trump, 48% Joe Biden in the state of Florida. Just a difference of 400,000 votes in Florida, but 90% reporting in Florida. So we're going to have a good idea now, that being one of those states that will have their election coverage wrapped up, that'll have their final vote recovered quickly. So Donald Trump, him losing Florida would be a devastating blow to his campaign, but currently Donald Trump ahead in Florida, and that's a state that's been so close in recent elections. It was separated by just tens of thousands of votes in the previous election against Hillary Clinton. We all remember the 2000 election, George Bush and Al Gore. Florida always seems to play a very pivotal role in the outcome of this election. Right now, showing Donald Trump has the lead right there. Georgia, another state to look at. Big lead for Donald Trump in that state, 56% of the vote going to Donald Trump, with 33% reporting. So he needs to continue to carry on those leads in states like Florida and Georgia. Right now, the Trump campaign will not like the results of the Virginia projection. Currently, Joe Biden trailing in Virginia. Margarita, very, very interesting, some of these early polling results, and we will continue to see more states throughout the night. But the key swing states right now, especially a state like Florida, is really, really showing surprising, you could say, results. Joe Biden did allude to the fact that maybe he would struggle in Florida, but currently Donald Trump leading in Florida.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely exciting to see. Now we're gonna go to commercial.
Jordan knows he shouldn't eat this entire bowl of nachos, but tonight he's earned that right. Because a few hours ago, in the middle of happy hour, he recognized a sign. Not from the gods or a bolt of lightning, but from a double heart, a kissy face, and a fourth ha in ha ha ha. That's when Jordan knew he was buzzed. So when it was time to go, he got a ride home instead of driving. Be a legend like Jordan. Recognize your buzzed warning signs and get a ride home. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
If I could go back and change it all, I would. I think I'm gonna miss you the most. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Or maybe it's just the little moments. If I could go back and change it all, if I could go back, I would. But I can't.
So, I got this new family, and I don't know what it is about this one, but she can't seem to put down that toy all day long. Tap, 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 tap. Oh, and she even talks to it. She talks to that more than she talks to him. What's up, bro? Nice shirt. Who's she talking to? Her mom? She talks to her mom a lot.
Welcome back to the LUTN 2020 election coverage. Of course, being election night, not all, lots of key issues being voted on tonight, not just the general election, one of which in our home state of Illinois being voted on tonight is the amendment to the Illinois Constitution, basically to remove the flat income tax and replace it with a graduated income tax. Last week, as I mentioned, I was able to talk with Dr. Nora, and Dr. Nora gave a very insightful interview about how, breaking down exactly how this fair tax agreement, as it's been labeled, will work. Let's hear Dr. Nora's thoughts on the fair tax agreement.
In order to understand the fair tax, you have to understand how
Yes.
taxes are done in Illinois as we speak. In Illinois, no matter how much money you make, all of our incomes are taxed at the same rate. I think it's 4.95% right now, or 4.97%, something like that. A little bit less than 5%. So it doesn't matter if it's you working part-time at Lewis University or the president of the university, your income is taxed the same. That's different than how taxes are handled at the national level or in most states. In most other states, they have what's called a graduated income tax, where income at lower levels is taxed at a lower rate than income at higher levels. So as you make more money, you pay a progressively higher share of your wages in taxes. So in Illinois, in the Constitution, it says that we have to all have the same tax rate. And that's what is the 4.95%. This fair tax amendment would allow for a graduated income tax in Illinois. So if the voters agree and vote yes on it, then the state legislature can adjust the tax rates based on how much money you make. And they've already passed a law setting out what those would be initially. And you can go on, I think, fairtaxcalculator, some website, I don't know, cut that out. I don't want to send people to some crazy internet site. But in the governor's office, they have a calculator where you can go and plug in how much money you make, how many dependents you have, and see the difference. So in terms of the arguments for and against this, those arguing for the fair tax will say things like, it's really important to have a responsible tax structure, and this new tax structure will allow us, the state, to generate more revenue and in a more just way by taxing the people that can afford it the most. Specifically people that make over $400,000 or whatever the threshold is for the really high tax rates. Governor Pritzker has basically said that our budget kind of depends on this increased revenue. Those opposing it often oppose it for a couple reasons. There's some that say that changing this the tax structure in this way would make Illinois less of an attractive place to live for wealthy residents. So you could end up with people leaving the state and fleeing the state to pay taxes, elsewhere because their taxes might go up. The counter argument to that, is, basically that a lot of states do this already. That I don't know the details offhand, but a majority of the states have some sort of graduated structure. The other, perhaps more persuasive argument has to do with how tax rates are going to change. The governor who supports this, and it's basically his idea, the governor has said that under the tax change, if it were to pass, 97% of Illinoisans would receive either a tax cut or the taxes would stay the same. So really only taxes would be raised on those top 3% of earners. Opponents of the tax change, however, say that the state legislature could change those tiers and those rates at any time and raise taxes whenever they want if they have the votes to do it. The counter argument to that is, of course, is that the state legislature always has the ability to change taxes, and they could do that and raise our taxes now if they wanted to. So.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. I want to thank Dr. Nora for that explanation, laying it out very clearly, but I'm sure a lot of you at home have seen signs all over the place for a fair tax agreement, for a tax hike amendment. It's a very important issue that is going to affect the future of Illinois taxes. And, we'll see what the initial results are of that amendment very soon. Right now, though, we're going to be checking in with Angel Olivo once again with our social media update. Angel, what's going on the Twitter sphere?
Well, Matt, as you can imagine, we have some traffic on Twitter. Again, hashtag election 2020. We're going to switch it up with some lighthearted, some twisted history here. Apparently, our first president, George Washington, spent his entire campaign fund, a whopping total of 50 pounds, to sway a couple voters. He allegedly spent it all on liquor. So we do have a couple some twisted history trending on Twitter. People are acknowledging that we're not going to know the results, so they're just kind of posting funny stuff. We see next to this tweet, we see some people joining in from across the world. Really, this one coming in from England, showing that that we have people watching in from the UK. Hashtag election night. We have Baby Yoda sipping on some tea. Keeping an eye on their sister republic election night. Again, keeping it lighthearted because I think we all understand that that this election might not be called tonight, and that's okay. We're here. We'll be watching it very closely here on LUTN. It's live coverage of the election night, and I'm sure a lot of people will be tuning in through the various news outlets and social media. So we'll keep an eye on that for sure. Keep it, whoever you vote for, we want to remind everyone that just keep in mind that you always want to keep kindness at the very top. You know, the democracy depends on a friendly relationship with people who may disagree with you. So we do have Vote 2020 trending with some lighthearted, kind words of advice for all of our American public here to keep it lighthearted. To be patient, you know, definitely wait for the results to come in completely. Unprecedented election we're having with the pandemic and the mail-in voting. So yeah, so just a reminder to keep it kind, keep it nice on social media. We don't need that negative kind of coverage. Back to
Thank you, Angel, for that. It's definitely interesting. George Washington definitely had an unusual way of getting votes. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who is watching us tonight, no matter where you are. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Want to thank everyone who's joining us here tonight. Thanks, Angel, for that update. And I agree definitely with what he said about how keeping the kindness in this country should be of the utmost priority right now. As obviously we heard from Steve Schwinn earlier tonight that we have not seen too much unrest so far. We'll see how the results progress throughout the evening. But we have to remember, no matter who wins, we have to make sure that we remain a peaceful and country that remains together, even in the face of this very controversial election, or at least very polarizing election. In terms of the election, we're going to have a look right now, once again, at our electoral map. And right now, a few more states have been called, namely New York, and the 29 electoral votes belonging to New York with 1% reporting has been decided that Joe Biden is the projected winner of New York. Out west, we see some projections also: North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Wyoming, states that don't carry a lot in terms of the electoral vote total, but are in fact going the way of Donald Trump right now. He won all those states. If you take a look at our electoral count, it is 119 to 92 in favor of Joe Biden right now, but still we have all the important closings and important poll data to report still. Very key state, Florida, Donald Trump widening his lead in Florida, still above 3%, about 400,000 votes to his advantage in Florida. We look up north with poll closings in key states like Wisconsin and Michigan. Michigan, currently a big lead for Donald Trump. Wisconsin, Donald Trump leading as well, but still very early. Only 1% in Wisconsin reporting, 16% in Michigan. So still a lot of votes to be counted, but things looking good in those states for Donald Trump. Take a look at Minnesota with 1% reporting, an early lead for Joe Biden in that state, Minnesota being a state that counts the absentee ballots first, so that may explain Joe Biden's lead there. You look at Wisconsin, though, Donald Trump has to be pleased with his lead right there. Wisconsin, a state that's been hit very hard by the coronavirus, as well as protests. So a state that a lot of people have been looking forward to in terms of influencing, in terms of being a good predictor of the outcome of this election, Wisconsin. Texas also, Joe Biden still leading in Texas, just a percentage point and a half lead in Texas. So that's very interesting. And then the key swing states, Ohio and Pennsylvania, Joe Biden with 60% reporting. His lead is continuing to shrink. Joe Biden had a very big early lead in Ohio early on in the night, but that lead has closed to around 4 percentage points with 60% reporting. 18 electoral votes in Ohio, Pennsylvania 11% reporting, and a 30% lead for Joe Biden in Pennsylvania. But once again, those are subject to change throughout the night depending on how the absentee ballots affect the counting of these overall votes. So also polls starting to close across the Midwest. We have Colorado, Kansas, Missouri. We should be getting readings from those states very soon. So as we progress throughout the night, we're starting to get some concrete results. And it really is very interesting considering how different, these states, garner their electoral count. It's just, it's really all up in the air right now, and it should be interesting to see how the mail-in voting is affected I know a lot of early votes have gone in. I know Margarita, I don't know how your experience was for when you went to vote, but my experience, the lines were pretty long, so we'll see.
Yeah, exactly. Same with me.
Yeah, absolutely. For how long were the lines when you went to go out to vote? Can you describe anything that happened when you went to vote?
I had to wait for about 2 hours.
Really?
I was in line, yeah.
2 hours. That is a considerable amount of time. What day of the week did you go?
I actually went yesterday.
Really? Interesting. Well, yeah, that makes sense. A lot of people trying to jam it and get their votes in at the last second. I voted about a week ago, and I was really impressed with the speed of the lines. I went in, and it was about 15 minutes I was waiting. The lines were social distancing, so socially distanced. So obviously, visually the line seemed a lot longer. But once I got in line, it went through very quickly. I wonder if people's experiences have been similar. But another thing we have to think about is how people are going to react to this election. What do you foresee in terms of once we know who the final election winner is? What do you think the kind of reaction will be around the country?
I'm not really sure. I feel like either way, it could go either way. I mean, no matter what, people are going to be mad. But I think we will just have to see who wins.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, hopefully the riots hold off. I mean, you never know. I mean, riots could happen whether President Trump wins or President Trump loses. You have no idea how this is going to shake out. Still very interesting. We'll be continuing to give you live updates on our electoral map throughout the night. For now, though, we are going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back very soon with more information on poll closings and current election data. Stay tuned on LUTN's 2020 election coverage.
Maybe he's really focused.
Hey, Michael. Maybe he likes spinning the wheels.
Maybe he just loves trucks.
Maybe he's just being a boy.
Preoccupation with objects is one early sign of autism. Learn the others today. The sooner it's diagnosed, the better.
Jordan knows he shouldn't eat this entire bowl of nachos, but tonight he's earned that right. Because a few hours ago, in the middle of happy hour, he recognized a sign. Not from the gods or a bolt of lightning, but from a double heart, a kissy face, and a fourth ha in ha ha ha. That's when Jordan knew he was buzzed. So when it was time to go, he got a ride home instead of driving. Be a legend like Jordan. Recognize your buzzed warning signs and get a ride home. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
No, I'm good.
If I could go back and change it all, I would. I think I'm gonna miss you the most. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Maybe it's just the little moments. If I could go back and change it all, if I could go back, I would. But I can't.
So, I got this new family, and I don't know what it is about this one, but she can't seem to put down that toy all day long. Tap, 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 tap. Oh, and she even talks to it. She talks to that more than she talks to him. What's up, bro? Nice shirt. Who's she talking to? Her mom? She talks to her mom a lot.
Maybe he's really focused.
Hey, Michael. Michael. Maybe he likes spinning the wheels.
Maybe he just loves trucks.
Maybe he's just being a boy.
Preoccupation with objects is one early sign of autism. Learn the others today. The sooner it's diagnosed, the better.
Back to Lewis University's television network, Election Night 2020 coverage. I'm Luis Chavez, and I'm here with State Senator candidate Tom McCullough. Tom, how are you today?
Doing great. Holding in. We've been running around, checking up on the polls all day and putting out signs all night till 3 in the morning last night, and just ready to have this under the belt or behind us.
You know, I think that's the sentiment we're all feeling tonight. So, Tom, I wanted to check in with you really quickly. How are any updates on your local election polls? You said you were out till 3 a.m. last night, so it sounds like you've been really busy.
Yeah, we were putting out signs at all of our locations. As of right now, I think she's got about 80% of the Democrat vote has been turned in. We're looking still at about 75% of the Republican vote. It looks like 63, 62, 38. So it's looking actually very positive in my favor with all the outstanding Republican votes out for me.
That's fantastic to hear, Tom. So, you know, obviously we've been hammering it over the head time and time again over these unexpected times during coronavirus. How's your experience been kind of involved more on the scene politically when with handling that sort of social distance scenario for you guys?
So it's just being very cautious of senior citizens and other people we would normally knock doors on. We had to swap over to a heavily digital campaign just to not risk anybody getting coronavirus. And during the beginning of the pandemic, we were heavily involved, myself and my campaign, in getting out PPE, sanitizer, gloves, and other donations out to senior centers, doctors, hospitals. And it's really just allowed us to be more community-centered, as I like to do, you know, in business life. So it's been a hard, difficult, you know, election cycle this year.
Yeah, of course. In these unprecedented times, again, is the key word of the year so far. Everything has kind of just had to flip on its head, and we have had to adapt greatly. But really appreciate you taking this call. One more quick question. Just you mentioned the word community and kind of building that sort of sense together. In this election moving forward, we're obviously looking at a very divided country right now. We're sort of pretty close in the lead for either candidate. Moving forward, do you have any advice or words of encouragement for voters everywhere after this election?
I lost audio completely, so I'm not sure what's going on, which is another downside of the coronavirus situation where everybody's trying to get Zoom and there's a million technical difficulties. I just think that highlights what the teachers and the students are trying to experience when they're trying to do remote learning. Oh, I can hear a little bit of audio back now. But I think that our technical difficulties I'm experiencing now is similar to what our parents are learning within home learning, and I'm a strong proponent for students to go back to school.
That's absolutely right. I feel like parents and teachers especially, you know, my mom personally at home is a teacher, so learning firsthand what all of those teachers and students have had to go through is really an eye-opening experience, like you said. But thank you, Tom McCullough. Thank you for joining us at Lewis University's election night coverage tonight. I wish you all the best, and hopefully everyone's staying safe out there.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you. You too. That was Tom McCullough. He's a state senator candidate for this year's 2020 election. I'm Luis Chavez, tossing it back to Matt on desk.
Thank you, Louis. I had opportunity to moderate a virtual town hall meeting with the residents of Fairmont, along with LUTN reporter Emily Kripag. Let's take a look.
Hi, my name is Emily Kripag, and we conducted a virtual town hall with the residents of Fairmont. Fairmont is an unincorporated part of Will County with a population of 2,519. Residents in this community have expressed some concerns about universal health care and racial tensions in the U.S. Let's take a look.
Margarita and I are with Lewis University, and we're just going to be doing this forum about voting and voting in Fairmont and voter education. So I'll have some questions. I have them right next to me, so if you see me looking down, that's why. But feel free to chime in with whatever feedback or comments or answers you guys have at any point. We welcome any kind of feedback. So yeah, we'll get started. So first, let's just start with something general. So do you guys keep up with politics? And what was your reaction, if you saw it, to the first presidential debate?
I'll respond. I absolutely keep up with politics. And I think the best description of it was the S show. I agree. That's what it was. Okay. It was not productive at all. You weren't able to hear their views and what their positions were. I think that first one was a waste of time. That's my opinion.
I don't particularly care for politics because, in my opinion, you can only do so much. You can present all these goals and plans, but it can get shot down in Congress or the House, and it's a wrap. So I vote as my due diligence and pray more than I vote. And for me, that first debate was child appropriate. I mean, it was like kids that bickering, and you don't listen, and it's no communication. It was, yeah, my opinion.
Are there any important issues that you guys feel are super pertinent to this election, or what kind of issues do you guys think that should be addressed as you listen to kind of the candidates before the election day?
Well, really, for me, I think what I've seen over these last years, the politicians have their statements, and you're supposed to trust in them, but I think they have so corrupted the ability to trust in terms of their actions not corresponding with their words. As you say about the first debate, I think it just demonstrates the degeneration that politics has come to in this country. And I'm just hoping in the election we can bring some more sanity back to things. And although it seems like politicians are a different kind of animal that aren't here to serve the public, but to serve their self-interest. But I still like to hope that there is still some idealism left in some of them, enough to get us through all of this.
Yeah, I completely understand that, especially because now with the current climate, does anybody else have any issues they feel are important?
This systemic racism is one for me. If we could change that, that could change a whole lot of things. Health amongst us, education amongst us, housing, justice.
Yeah, I completely agree with that as well. Are there any elections in the past that you feel are similar to this 2020 presidential election? In terms of concerns that are addressed, or just in terms of the kind of climate that there is?
I would look at 1968. Now, there have been comparisons of the divisiveness and the polarization now versus then. I think now it's worse, but still you had 1968, you had Nixon as the law and order candidate, because you had all the demonstrations at the Democratic conventions, and that left, I think, Hubert Humphrey so weakened that the Democrats really didn't have a chance. So then we had Nixon, and unfortunately, although I still give him credit for a number of his foreign policy successes, his own personality, I think, was his final undoing.
In 1968, I wouldn't have any memory of that particular election simply because I was only 10 then. But of all the elections that I've been a part of, I have never ever in my life seen anything as horrible as this. To me, it's like every day we're just left in shock, wondering, is this really the United States? I mean, the things you see, the things you hear, the statements that are being, you know, with now that we're in this internet world, everything is captured. You got breaking news hitting your phone. You turn on the TV, you know, it's nonstop. So you've missed nothing, and there's so much to see with what's going on right now. And I think our country is extremely divided. I've never been so concerned about what is going to happen. I know all about the civil rights movement. It was one of the worst times ever for Black people, but it was a necessary time to get us to where we are today. But God knows we do not want to go back there. Because it would never be the same, because the tolerance level would never be the same, which would make it just a war. And who wants to go through a home war? I don't.
So we had to realize that the generation now, they are not going to sit quietly like many of our ancestors did. They are persistent, and that's what it takes. Be persistent, know what you want, know your rights, be persistent, and work to get what belongs to us. They're not giving us anything. It belongs to us. And what I can understand about Trump and all of his followers, who do they think they are? We found out he's a dictator. And if he keep dictating, being a dictator, and we follow him, what's going to happen to America?
What do you guys think is most important for first-time voters, especially to know for this upcoming election?
Make your vote count. You like Ms. Harris said, people died for the right for us to vote. And like I said, politics, yeah, they come with all these we gonna do, but then when it come down to it and the vote comes to it, it changes. But still, people died for the right for us to vote. Let's take advantage of the right to vote.
How do you guys get a lot of your information, news-wise, or just figuring out which candidates you would like to support?
Meetings, community meetings, friends, families, and a lot of things on TV is very contradictory and confusing, because one commercial says, vote this way and this will happen, and another commercial will say, vote this way or this will happen. Mm-hmm. So I take my hat off to you, young lady at the Lewis University, for doing what you're doing to at least have some idea to pass it on to the college students and your friends and family of how important it is to vote.
I had something to say about the 60s and 68 and the riots and all that stuff that went on. They weren't simply because we were fighting for voting rights and stuff. A lot of that was influenced by racial tension. See, and back then, it was a real serious thing. I grew up in the 60s. I mean, I was grown in the 60s. Okay, I'll put it that way. And I went to the service in 68, and it was the same in the service as it was here on the street. When I went to Lockport High School, as long as I was in sports and doing stuff, everybody was cool. They liked everybody that was in sports. But then when the sports was over, it was truly a different story altogether. I mean, the people were totally different towards you. But one thing for certain, with my grandfather, you had to vote. When you got to be 18, you had to vote, no matter what. And we would go around and pick people up and take them to vote. Some places you go back then, it was a little harder than, other places, but people would still vote, even when they were getting beat down. So we have to let our kids and their kids know that we come a long way to get this, and we got to stand up and fight for it.
Does anybody have any other perspectives kind of about the candidates now, or how President Trump is doing currently in office right now that hasn't been said already, whether you support him or not?
Well, there's a bit of an irony in the Chicago Tribune. I'm not sure how you pronounce her name, but it's Darlene or Daleen Glanton wrote that she observes now that, okay, given our current government, a lot of white folks feel the government isn't serving them. So she says, well, now you know how the African Americans, because the government hasn't served them, or she says us, for years and years and years. So if nothing else, this current dysfunction may help some whites better empathize with what African Americans and other oppressed folks have gone through in this country.
I was never prouder than when I saw those protests taking place all around our country, all around the United States and all around the world. I had never been more proud to see the support. So we know that there's more of them than it is on the other side. So that's encouraging.
And then for me, they elected him because he's a businessman and they want to run, but this is a government. This isn't a business. You can't run this like a business and then you're a bad business person. So it don't compute.
To piggyback off of what we just said, what are your guys' perspectives about protests that maybe some would say have gone wrong, or the riots that kind of developed out of that?
I mean, I do not believe that the peaceful protesters, and there's certainly that's what the majority was. There were other people that joined in. There were people who are bad actors regardless. And I think there are people who took advantage of that situation to say, this is a great place to go and start some mayhem and make it look like we're doing it. That's how I feel about it. But I would never stand for violence. I don't think that's productive. I can't remember, Mom, back when Chicago Street, downtown Joliet was totally destroyed. Back then, we had a lot of Black businesses on Chicago Street. There was a grocery store, and that was when Martin Luther King was killed.
If I can cut in right quick, a lot of this rioting and looting and stuff is actually promoted by somebody. See, I know Donald Trump and his organization, when he knows that there's going to be a peaceful protest somewhere, I'm not going to say him personally, but his followers say, well, we got to go in there and wreck that. We don't want nobody to change their mind, about how the people are. And this is not a peaceful protest. But if you notice, every time there's a peaceful protest, somebody comes along and starts trouble. It's intentional. That trouble is intentional. It's to take your mind off the message that's being sent by the protesters.
Distraction.
Absolutely.
Exactly. That's all that is. And then the right and left candidates, however they call them, the one that's all happy and glad. Oh yeah, there was riots and that was a lousy protest. They were rioting and they was doing this and that. Yeah, they was rioting and doing this and that because you and your group set it up to throw the interest off of the important message that was trying to be sent.
And Emily, I would say, look at it now. They still protesting, but you don't see the riots. You don't, I mean, from the time George Floyd got murdered until now, it's still protesting, but you can see at different points in times when there's been different dynamics. If it was consistent, then that would be an issue. But peaceful protesting is good.
So with that in mind, why is this election so important to you guys, or just in general?
I just wanted to say that, you know, once again, the needs and suffering of the American people do need to be heard. So that's a biggie. And yeah, my meditation peeps are, they send out metta or loving kindness meditation. And they talk about, you know, the importance of being the calm person in the boat. So that's what we're all about. And this is a very interesting talk, though. It's a good conversation, and carry on.
So the importance of the election is, I think, more so than ever, kind of what the country actually believes in. Because periodically I'll see reports that say, well, this is not who we are, but yet the actions say to the contrary. So I think Joe Biden said it also, that do we really believe in these things? If we really believe in following rules and democracy, then the people need to speak up, like what's been said, exercise our right to vote. But if we are a nation that believes it's okay to have double standard, it's okay for certain people to have more than others, then the election will reflect that. So without rehashing a lot of things, I think what's kind of eye-opening is things that were taken for granted. The Constitution says this, with the understanding that people will follow the rules. So, for example, I know what a stop sign means, but if I run the stop sign and the police officer sees me run the stop sign, he said, well, that's okay. The law doesn't mean anything because there's no agreement all the way around in the process. So I think that, just kind of in summary, the election will kind of reveal, do we truly believe we're a nation of laws, or is it okay for there to be double standards?
And my final question tonight, how are you all voting this year? Are you planning on voting in person, early, by mail? What method are you guys using?
I ballot, my envelope is empty. I voted by mail, and I hand delivered my ballot to a drop box in front of the county clerk's office. And I was comfortable doing that because there was a camera there watching.
I voted, and my husband, my son, my daughter, so we all voted, and I'm encouraging others to vote. Do not wait until next Tuesday. Vote now.
Exactly. Because I voted, my wife voted, and then we went around taking other people to vote downtown in person at the clerk's office.
Right.
And then on the way down there, we were asking people, have you voted yet? Don't wait till the 3rd to vote. Because if you mail your vote in on the 3rd and it's stamped, it's going to be like 4 or 5 days before it's counted. See, you want everything to be done now. Now is the time to vote.
Right.
Thank you guys so much for your feedback and for participating. This was really helpful for us.
Just like how the Fairmont residents said, the younger generation will play a huge part in this election. As election night continues, Fairmont remains one community among many that will make sure their voices are heard in this election. For LUTN, I'm Emily Kripag.
I just want to say thank you to the Fairmont residents for the opportunity. I moderated the virtual town hall, and it was very interesting to learn about the issues that they face as residents, and it was really an interesting conversation. They talked about civil rights, and they also talked about the day that Martin Luther King passed away. They remember that day very vividly, and it was very interesting conversation.
Yeah, tremendously eye-opening conversation, really, and we know how big of an issue civil rights have been in this country these last few months. So really, really great to hear those people and have their voices heard, really. Just a tremendous job by you and Mayed and everybody who put that together. It was really some good stuff to listen to. We want to thank all of you viewers who have been loyal to us tonight here on the LUTN 2020 election coverage. We are going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we have more coverage and more results to get to you, so stay tuned.
Jordan knows he shouldn't eat this entire bowl of nachos, but tonight he's earned that right. Because a few hours ago, in the middle of happy hour, he recognized a sign. Not from the gods or a bolt of lightning, but from a double heart, a kissy face, and a fourth ha in ha ha ha. That's when Jordan knew he was buzzed. So when it was time to go, he got a ride home instead of driving. Be a legend like Jordan. Recognize your buzzed warning signs and get a ride home. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
If I could go back and change it all, I would. I think I'm gonna miss you the most. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Maybe it's just the little moments. If I could go back and change it all, if I could go back, I would. But I can't.
So, I got this new family, and I don't know what it is about this one, but she can't seem to put down that toy all day long. Tap, 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 tap. Oh, and she even talks to it. She talks to that more than she talks to him. What's up, bro? Nice shirt. Who's she talking to? Her mom? She talks to her mom a lot.
To LUTN's election night coverage as we are live. We'd like to welcome on now Professor Steve Schwinn once again from the University of Chicago. Professor Schwinn, we talked a little bit about earlier, how polarizing the presidency of Donald Trump has been. What are some of the reasons you think why politics have become so polarized in recent years?
I think that's a good question, a really hard question. President Trump has taken some positions that that I think have polarized the nation, and in some cases, I think some folks would classify them as kind of hard right positions, and in other situations, they're positions that simply cut against the grain of American politics and really disrupt and violate well-established norms in our political system. And a lot of folks like that, and a lot of folks don't.
I just wanted to ask you, why is it important to vote, especially for younger people?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I urge everybody to vote. Obviously, today was an election day, and the polls are closed at this point. But it's just so critical that we vote. It really is our civic duty. It's our responsibility, and it's one of the key ways that we can register our voice through our political system. Right? What we can do is actually go to the polls and vote and make ourselves count on everything from candidates for public office to, for example, in Illinois, the constitutional amendment that would allow the state legislature to enact a graduated income tax. This is one of the key ways that we exercise our democratic rights in a society like ours. Free speech, obviously, is another, access to the courts, access to justice, but right to vote is right there and central in terms of the way that we register our opinion with our elected leaders and in our government, and so it's just critical that we participate.
Professor Schwinn, you mentioned the fair tax agreement. Can you just talk a little bit about, just elaborate from both sides, what some of the arguments for and against that particular amendment are as the people of Illinois vote on it tonight?
Yeah, sure, you bet. It's a really good question. So in Illinois right now, we have a flat tax, an income tax that's flat across income different levels. And that's very different than the federal system that has a graduated income tax, where as you earn higher and higher money, you pay a higher and higher rate on that marginal higher amount of money that you're earning. In Illinois, the problem is that the flat income tax has really, in some ways, hamstrung the state in gaining tax revenue from its citizens, because everybody's taxed at the same rate. The state legislature doesn't have authority to tax individuals who earn much more than average, for example, at a higher rate. And as a result, the state legislature is in a bit of a bind where it needs to raise revenue on the one hand, but in order to do that, it would need to raise tax rates on everybody. The constitutional amendment, or the proposed constitutional amendment, would give the legislature the authority to enact a graduated income tax and tax individuals at higher income levels at a higher rate. It would potentially then free up the legislature a little bit in terms of earning additional tax revenue from high income earners in the state and not have to burden lower income earners in order to get that tax revenue. Under the status quo, again, at a flat tax, if the Illinois state legislature wanted to raise tax revenue, it would have to increase the tax for everybody. The constitutional amendment would allow it to tax only high income earners. Now, what we've been hearing from opponents to the proposed amendment is that this would give the legislature sort of unfettered control to increase everybody's taxes. But what that argument really misses is that the legislature already has that control to increase everybody's taxes. But when they do it, they have to increase everybody's taxes at the same rate. The graduated income tax would allow the legislature a little bit more flexibility, indeed a lot more flexibility in terms of raising the rate for high income earners, but not touching the income tax rate for lower income earners or middle class income earners. And so we've seen this back and forth play out, and we'll see what happens. The problem is particularly acute given the budget crunch that we're seeing in the COVID crisis. If the measure does not pass, then the state legislature will have to look for other sources of revenue. And I suppose one possibility would be to raise taxes on all Illinoisans.
What are some things that individuals who may be too young, or even DEC recipients who can't vote, what are some things that they can do to contribute to the election?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, you know, it's so exciting this election cycle because we really are seeing a new kind of wave of multimedia, online media, electronic media opportunities to get involved in the election that we really haven't seen before, at least not to this degree. So we're seeing everything from Facebook to Twitter to Instagram involvement in the election. And using those platforms too for things like get out the vote efforts, for cure your ballot efforts, which I think is a really exciting trend that we're seeing this cycle, and encouraging people just to exercise the right to vote, which again is so important in a democracy, and to the extent that their ballot that they actually submitted might be in question, to go back and cure that ballot. So we're seeing some really exciting trends in multimedia electronic platforms these days that we haven't seen to this degree in prior elections. And And I think we're seeing that play out in the unprecedented number of voters that are going to the polls.
Great stuff, Professor Schwinn. Thank you so much again for joining us tonight. We'll hopefully check in with you later on in the night. Right now, though, we're going to take another quick break, but stay tuned. We'll talk with Maya Lloyd after the break, and we'll also have some 9 o'clock poll closing updates. Stay tuned.
Maybe he's really focused.
Hey, Michael. Michael. Maybe he likes spinning the wheels.
Maybe he just loves trucks.
Maybe he's just being a boy.
Preoccupation with objects is one early sign of autism. Learn the others today. The sooner it's diagnosed, the better.
Jordan knows he shouldn't eat this entire bowl of nachos, but tonight he's earned that right. Because a few hours ago, in the middle of happy hour, he recognized a sign. Not from the gods or a bolt of lightning, but from a double heart, a kissy face, and a fourth ha in ha ha ha. That's when Jordan knew he was buzzed. So when it was time to go, he got a ride home instead of driving. Be a legend like Jordan. Recognize your buzzed warning signs and get a ride home. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
If I could go back and change it all, I would. I think I'm gonna miss you the most. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Or maybe it's just the little moments. If I could go back and change it all, if I could go back, I would. But I can't.
So, I got this new family, and I don't know what it is about this one, but she can't seem to put down that toy all day long. Tap, 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 tap. Oh, and she even talks to it. She talks to that more than she talks to him. What's up, bro? Nice shirt. Who's she talking to? Her mom? She talks to her mom a lot.
So right now we're going to do a map update. A little bit ago, Kansas and Missouri were blue. Right now they are currently red with Donald Trump projected with a 51.4% vote with 451,259 vote count. Missouri with Donald Trump at 51.1% vote percent and vote count at 404,450. We also have Colorado with projected winner Joe Biden, 57.4% with 1,477,517 votes, as well as New Mexico, Joe Biden taking the lead at 56.7% with 239,793 votes.
Yeah, it's very interesting as we continue to have more poll closings. We just had the 9 o'clock polls come in, so a lot of our western states, we will start counting those as well. Currently, according to CNN right now, Colorado is projected to go to Biden, but again, the key states to keep your eye on: Pennsylvania, Ohio, Florida. Donald Trump seems to be coming near a victory in Florida. His lead is up to about continues to be at 3% in Florida. Right now, we're still getting conflicting information about Missouri and Kansas. Minnesota currently right now still only 26% of the precincts in here at Minnesota. Wisconsin as well showing a very slight edge for Trump, but again, those are still very early in the counting process right now. So we will continue to monitor throughout the night these very pivotal swing states such as Pennsylvania and Ohio. Michigan also a state to keep your eye on. 17% the lead for Michigan, 17% lead for Trump in Michigan. So right now, Margarita, as these polls continue to close right now, some very interesting how tight this race has been so far. You look at the swing states right now, it is very close across the board.
Yep, and just added was Wyoming, with Donald Trump taking the lead with 71.8% with 1,642 vote count with 1% reporting. Currently, we're at, Joe Biden is at 131, while Donald Trump is trailing behind with 98.
Currently, what you want to keep an eye on is are these battleground states currently, states like Ohio and Pennsylvania. Donald Trump desperately needs states like Ohio, states like Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Iowa, Arizona, if he wants to stay in this election. Right now, if Joe Biden continues to hold, if Donald Trump continues to hold Michigan and Wisconsin, it's going to bode very well for him in the overall electorate. If you look right now at our projected electoral count total, it's 89 for Joe Biden, 72 for Donald Trump. So still plenty of states to be decided as we continue throughout the night. If you look at the popular vote, it is 50,000 50% to Donald Trump, just below 48% to Joe Biden. Very close in the popular vote, about a 2 million vote for Donald Trump so far. So we'll see how that changes throughout the night. But we will continue to monitor the popular vote as well as key races in states like Pennsylvania and Ohio.
Yeah, and even if we look in North Carolina right now, it actually just updated. They are even. Joe Biden and Donald Trump are currently at 49.4% for the vote percent, with 87% reporting in North Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, North Carolina, really interesting state to watch right now because Joe Biden had that early advantage in North Carolina, and that's what we've been talking about throughout the night, how a lot of these states have been counting absentee ballots first, so we're seeing dramatic leads early in the night for the Joe Biden campaign, but as the night progresses, Donald Trump is starting to make a comeback. North Carolina is one of those states, as Margarita just mentioned, Donald Trump making a big comeback in North Carolina. He's come back to about even. He continues to lead in Florida. Virginia, Donald Trump continues. Donald Trump actually has taken the lead in Virginia. So these swing states, this is playing out very similar to the 2016 election, where a lot of these states, the polling data showed that the polling data was showing that Joe Biden was leading in a lot of these key states like Pennsylvania, Virginia, North Carolina, but as the results are coming in now, Donald Trump continues to lead. These are very interesting developments here. It really it's just interesting how this polling data is so is just continue. I mean, it shows one thing, but it's starting to get to the point now where we. You can't really take the polls for granted at this point.
Yeah, like you said, it's super interesting, especially like earlier how we were talking about how we really don't know. And like we're seeing right now, we have some states that are flip-flopping, and we just really don't know. We have to keep an eye on our map and just stay updated.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really is. I mean, you look at these polls. Actually, I'm hearing right now that joining me live right now is going to be our reporter Lloyd, and she is currently interviewing with a state representative of the 43rd District of Illinois, Representative John O'Connor. He's the candidate for also the state representative spot for the 37th District. Michelle Fadley will also be joining along with John O'Connor. Mayette, we're going to go live to you right now. We'll go back live to Mayette Lloyd when we get John O'Connor and Fadley. They seem to have dropped off. But yeah, we had a little bit of technical issues, but we will continue to monitor these very, very close state polls right now. New projections also coming in. It is declared that, North Dakota has been declared, Donald Trump has been declared the projected winner of North Dakota, as well as South Dakota as well. Across the whole South, if you check out the map, it's Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama, South Carolina, all leaning for Donald Trump right now. And I was talking about this earlier about how, how the polls have kind of showed contradictory data. The final results from these polls have showed contradictory data from the previous polls, exit polls that were taken in the previous weeks coming into the election. And you do have to take into account that there is, to some extent, there's a 3% margin of error either way for each candidate, which could lead to about a 6% lead. So even though you think about how Joe Biden was leading in states like Pennsylvania and Ohio coming into the election, Donald Trump has closed the gap. Pennsylvania right now, Donald Trump has taken the lead in Pennsylvania after suffering a huge deficit. I think we're going to go back to Mayette right now. She has Representative John O'Connor on the Zoom, John Connor on the Zoom call right now. Mayette, take it away.
Thank you for joining us. Can you give us an update on how tonight's local elections are going?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayette. So far, my election's going fairly well based on the results that have come in from the Will County Clerk's office tonight. At this point, with and I apologize, I always have to refresh my browser just to make sure. But at this point, with 88% of the vote in, it's at 65. I'm at 65% versus 34% for my opponent. So my race is going fairly well. Some of the other local races, Meg Loughran-Capel, who is running for her state Senate seat in the next state Senate district over, with 88% reporting again. She's ahead 56% to 43%. And then Dagmara Avelar, D. Avelar, who's running for my seat that I vacated to run for the Senate, again with 97% in, she's at 59% to 35% to 4%. So at least as far as the state legislature races that we're I'm kind of following, locally with the adjoining districts. I would say that the Democrats are doing very well, tonight based on those results. So obviously things are different in at the national level, but locally, state legislators in the area, the Democrats seem to be faring very, very well.
Thank you for that update. Did you want to give any predictions on tonight's elections?
What I've learned is that to make a prediction at this point, with many results still to come in particular with parts of Pennsylvania where the count has not really officially begun, it would seem to be very premature. At this point, I think this is going to be a very late night, and that we're going to be waiting for results, and it may be a few days before we really know exactly what's going to happen. So That's, you know, I think we kind of knew going into this. I think a lot of people were anticipating that this would be a close race, and it's looking like that's exactly what's going to happen.
Thank you so much for that update. Good luck on everything. Back to the desk.
Thank you very much, Maya.
Thank you, Mayette, and thank you to John Connor, of course, for joining us and giving us that great information on the election night. And a lot of in terms of the local elections have been very interesting tonight as well. The Will County currently resides in the 3rd district. If you look at the national U.S. House races, Marie Newman currently leading in the U.S. House 3rd district. In the U.S. Senate elections, Representative Dick Durbin seems to have clinched the U.S. Senate seat for Illinois, as well as the fair tax agreement. Coming up next now, if you've ever thought about the people who help make sure your ballot and personal information are safe while voting, we have Ed Ronkowski from the Will County Republicans to discuss poll watching and monitoring voter fraud. Let's see what Ronkowski has to say.
You send the poll watchers in the precincts. They could look for people that are ghost voters pretending to be somebody else. They could look for ballot box stuffing, illegal electioneering, a whole numerous things. But voting is now spread out over something like 54 days, and they do it early voting and the vote by mail. And since it's spread out over a period of time, there's all sorts of ways that somebody who wants to change the election results can do it. And you try to get your poll watchers in wherever possible. In the old days, you had voting started at 6 a.m. and finished at 6 p.m. and everybody voted on that 12-hour period. The poll watcher would go to his precinct, look at the ballot box, it was empty, stare at the ballot box all day. People would go in and vote. And then at 6 p.m., when the last person in line voted, they would count the ballots in front of the poll watcher, sign the results. The poll watcher gets a copy of that information and leaves. And the one poll watcher could see that everything was done right. Now with voting by mail, you don't know what's going to happen with those ballots. Post office could misdeliver them. Somebody could pretend to be from the clerk's office, or somebody could help the voter vote the way he wants, give him an unsealed envelope, and the shill could promise to deliver it. But in the meantime, he could change the vote, add or subtract votes, and then deliver it either through a drop box or by mail, or drop it off to the clerk's office. So there's no way a poll watcher could know when that's happening. There's a lot of opportunity for vote fraud. Here in Will County, we saw an election that was decided by 12 votes, and they went through, and this was the punch cards where you punch out at a number, a little like Chad, and the lawyers from both sides held up the cards to the light for 6 months, counted over 100,000 ballots, and found out the guy actually won by 2 more votes than what he got originally out of over 100,000 votes cast. Nowadays, with these computers, they've had in Florida where some college student swapped out the card, the computer card, so the when a ballot counter would work, it only counts so many votes, percentage of votes for one candidate, and add those to the other candidate. One kid was changing a whole precinct's worth of votes. So you got to be observant at every level. We need more citizen involvement. They've changed the law so high school students and college students could be election judges. They get paid. We found out that some of the high school students are so computer illiterate they run circles around some of the older retired people that don't even have cell phones. And we like younger kids like that to do that, because that's the slow up in the election. I went poll watched locally here at the library, and they had enough election judges, they had enough polling booths, but they only had 2 computer stations to get the voter registered and the proper ballot printed up. And the more computer literate you are, the faster you could do that. And if we would have had 2 high school or college students that knew a lot about computers, there wouldn't have been a 35-minute to a 2-hour wait to vote. If somebody wants to be a Republican poll watcher, pick a precinct trying to keep it honest, they should contact us.
I had the opportunity to interview Ed Ronkowski, and I thought the story about him explaining the student in Florida who swapped out the computer card to count only a certain amount of votes for each candidate, I thought that was very interesting. I had never heard of anything like that, and I think it is important to educate ourselves on voter fraud and issues like that. So now we're gonna go to Angel with his coverage of trending tweets.
Staying tuned, but remember to be patient for the results coming in.
Welcome back. Sorry, it seems like Angel cut out there. Right now, though, drama continues to be unfolding on the electoral map as Donald Trump continues to lead in several swing states. Right now, Donald Trump, the lead in Florida. Donald Trump leads in North Carolina by 0.4% after trailing earlier in the night. Donald Trump leads by 8% in Virginia after trailing early in that state. Pennsylvania, Donald Trump has pulled out to an 8-point lead in Pennsylvania, only 25% in Pennsylvania, but once again, a huge swing. So we started off in states like Pennsylvania, Ohio. Donald Trump had a huge deficit when those polls opened, but now that the in-person ballots are starting to come in, it's starting to swing dramatically in the favor of Donald Trump, and we'll see if that continues throughout the evening. But once again, you look at Michigan, an 11% lead for Donald Trump. It seems like Donald Trump really is leading in a lot of these key swing states. Again, we'll see if this continues. I mean, this is an unprecedented election, an unforeseen election in terms of how the votes are being counted. So we could see dramatic swings still late in the race. We've already seen dramatic states in a lot of these key states tonight. Right now, though, it sounds like we've got Angel back with us. So we're going to swing it back to you, Angel. What's going on Twitter right now?
All right, yeah, thank you so much, Matt, for that. On Twitter right now, again, keeping it lighthearted, we're seeing a lot of funny tweets come through. People really just showing their interest in this election, but also, keeping in mind that it might be a very long night for us here covering the election. Election night, hashtag election night trending with this picture of a dog watching the results come in from CNN as we are watching it as well. I'm sure a lot of people are at home with their pets, with their loved ones, really tuning in, but also keeping an open mind about the winner and not being too quick to call just yet. We still have a lot of places that are yet to report. Another tweet that we're following are these funny dancing tweets. Here we have Fox News sharing Donald Trump, kind of showing us his moves at his many rallies that he's had leading up to the election. Very busy man, multiple states, a lot of the key battle states he was visiting. He kind of showed us his moves there. So something that people are starting to share and trend is some of these dance moves. Another interesting and funny video that we're covering today is this video of in Philadelphia, some Biden supporters coming out and dancing in front of City Hall. That's how people are coming out and showing their support at many polling places on the last day of elections, kind of keeping the enthusiasm up, keeping the civil unity high, and also just showing good spirit, a good American spirit here on this very, very contested election. Now, we definitely want to remind everyone again, thank you so much for joining us. And just keep an open mind as we're getting the results in. We definitely want to make sure that we are not calling anything too soon and watching out for that misinformation that we keep hearing about. Said to be one of the most securest elections. But one of the things that experts all over the United States are reminding us is that it is way too soon to call. So keep these fun tweets rolling, and we'll keep covering them as we progress into the night. Back to you folks at the desk.
Thank you, Angel, for that. It's definitely awesome to see humor on Twitter. And like Angel said earlier, we have to keep the kindness, love everyone, no matter what our beliefs are. So, Americans invested in the election is not limited to humans. Even dogs are hooked on these stressful times. Trump's dancing was also very cute. And now we're gonna go to commercial break.
Maybe he's really focused.
Hey, Michael. Michael. Maybe he likes spinning the wheels.
Maybe he just loves trucks.
Maybe he's just being a boy.
Preoccupation with objects is one early sign of autism. Learn the others today. The sooner it's diagnosed, the better.
So, I got this new family, and I don't know what it is about this one, but she can't seem to put down that toy all day long. Tap, 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 tap. Oh, and she even talks to it. She talks to that more than she talks to him. What's up, bro? Nice shirt. Who's she talking to? Her mom? She talks to her mom a lot.
University's television network election night coverage for 2020. I'm Luis Chavez, back with another update from a local representative. Here with me tonight is George Pearson, the local Republican chairman committee. George, how are you tonight?
I'm well, Chavez. How are you?
I'm fantastic. So during these, again, the key word, as I said before, is these are unprecedented times. During these times, have you noticed any new things during these election times, during these polls that you might have not seen in previous elections?
Actually, yes. As I'm looking over some of the numbers, and especially here in Will County, we're seeing a phenomenal turnout in the Black community that actually has been supporting President Trump in the 1st Congressional District, in the 2nd Congressional District, and in the 3rd Congressional District. I have to admit that, a lot of work was placed in there, and we're, pleasantly surprised, for some of those results.
Of course, it's always nice to see voter turnout regardless of supporter or agenda. Also, in continuation with this sort of unprecedented time theme during these COVID precautionary times, what has the Republican committee done to ensure that everyone is safe regardless of political agenda?
So what we've actually done is adopted a lot of the safety measures that have been in place since March and April. We're sanitizing our facilities over and over again. We're ensuring that face masks when the physical distancing isn't there. We're offering gloves to individuals that want. Even with a lot of our election night watch parties tonight that we've offered, instead of one large location where we were originally planning, we are actually located at 7 different locations in order to be able to put the distance in between everyone that is necessary.
Well, it's definitely good to hear that everyone's taking as many precautions as possible to maintain everyone's safety. One more quick question. Obviously, you know, we're here for the big stakes for the presidential election, but what a lot of people don't realize is that there are a lot of smaller elections that are also equally as important. So do you have any advice for people who are not really in the know of those smaller elections and political offices?
Absolutely. Your local elections control a lot of your taxing as well as how education is paid for. So your school board elections that will be coming up in the consolidated races. But in this race, you had a lot of county board races, and one in particular being able to switch the majority. You also had a lot of seats up in the General Assembly, and those are the folks, your state legislators, your state senators, and your state reps that actually create the legislation that decides also how education is paid for in this state. So a lot of those races, and I'm looking at the down ballot votes, I've seen a lot of drop off, and that usually hurts a lot of our down ballot candidates if you don't actually take the time out to fill out that information, as well as your judges, your local judges. So a lot of folks have been upset with how the justice system has been performing. Well, I'm looking again at the drop-off numbers from all the way from our federal races all the way down to our judges that were on the back of a lot of ballots here in Will County, and I did not see that continuation of voters continuing to fill out the complete ballot. So take heed that entire ballot is very important, especially those down ballot races. They affect you a lot more because that's closer to home.
Exactly like you mentioned, a lot of people, you know, especially during these times, their education is extremely important, and we've had to shift into some sort of hybrid or even completely online classes. Filling out the entire ballot is definitely very important moving forward to sort of adjust to these times. So we thank you, George Pearson, for joining us tonight. Thank you for joining Lewis University's television network. I wish you the best of luck moving forward. Well, thank you, George. Now back to you guys at the desk.
Thanks for that, Lewis. And thank you to Chairman Pearson also for that interview. Very interesting, and it also extremely important to make sure you know how important those local elections are, including the circuit court judges. As we've mentioned, there are several reports coming in from across the nation in terms of the final state electoral votes, but it's important not to jump to any conclusions, of course, because definitely there still could be large swings because of the mail-in voting aspect of this election. Here's Dr. Nora talking about how the mail-in voting could affect how the overall counting of these votes.
It really will vary by state how they count their ballots. So each state makes their own rules when it comes to a lot of election stuff. And so in some cases, you have states like Florida, North Carolina, Texas, to some extent Arizona, that are swing states. Those kind of Sunbelt states, they have laws that allow their election officials to open up the envelopes, check signatures, pre-process vote by mail envelopes before election day. And so what you're likely to see on election night is all of those vote by mail ballots that are going to be predominantly Democratic enter into the system fairly early in Texas, Arizona, Georgia, Florida, North Carolina. So you're liable to see gigantic Democratic leads early in the night. And then once all the votes start getting tabulated by for the in-person election day voting, which are expected to skew Republican, you're going to see those Democratic leads start to get eaten away at. Okay, so if you're a Democrat, don't start popping any champagne just because you see Joe Biden get out to a big lead in Florida. Conversely, there are other states, particularly in the Midwest and kind of the Rust Belt. I'm thinking specifically of Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. Those election officials are forbidden from even like touching the envelopes until election day. There are counties in Pennsylvania that said that they're not even going to start counting mail-in ballots until the day after election day. So what you're likely to see in those states is being referred to on Twitter as the red mirage, that you're going to see gigantic Republican leads in states like Wisconsin and in Pennsylvania. But again, if you're a Republican, don't start popping the champagne yet either and celebrating, because once all the mail-in ballots start getting processed, which are going to lean heavily Democratic, those leads are going to be expected to shrink. So one possibility is that we're going to be in for a week's worth of counting as these mail-in ballots get processed, because it's not just as simple as opening up an envelope and throwing it through a machine. They have to verify barcodes in a lot of states, check signatures. It's a very complicated and contentious process sometimes.
Like we said this whole time, right now is an unprecedented time, and due to the influx of mail-in voting, there will be a little bit of a delay, and we won't necessarily know who is going to be the next president for a couple of days.
Yeah, absolutely. And what Dr. Nora has said is pretty much happening right now. You look at states like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, who are forbidden from opening up their mail-in ballots until either tomorrow or later tonight or in the coming weeks. The red mirage is holding right now for Donald Trump. Slim lead in Wisconsin, just a 2% lead. That's a very key state for him. Pennsylvania, a 9% lead. But again, we're still waiting on a lot of the mail-in absentee ballots to be counted in the next few days. Coming up next, we're going to have a report from the Democracy Project, which works to create events to encourage and teach the importance of voting. And the story will be by LUTN reporter Frank Panos. Frank, take it away.
The Democracy Project is benefiting the Will County community in many ways, such as helping community members register to vote in the 2020 presidential election and reaching out to community members through phone banking.
Basically, it's a small group of 20 community organizations from across the Chicagoland area, from Waukegan to Joliet, conducted by the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights, also known as ICER. It's an organization in Illinois, a huge organization in Illinois. They conduct civic engagement activities like phone banking and voter registration. They provide a list of phone numbers from a voter database for volunteers to make calls in targeted areas, to encourage voting, and provide information about important legislation on the ballot, such as like the constitutional amendment that's on the ballot this year in Illinois. It brings together a diverse group of passionate and talented individuals. The team has also registered hundreds of community members while also adhering to the rigorous safety guidelines and social distancing.
The Democracy Project has helped make connections with other community centers and non-for-profit organizations. These connections lead to collaborations and projects that will help advance the social well-being of individuals.
On October 24th, the Spanish Community Center hosted an early vote march to the Will County office to help community members exercise their right to vote.
Hola, buenas tardes. Reportando desde el Centro Comunitario Español. Estamos celebrando Early Voting Day.
The Democracy Project has been present for several years and will continue to help benefit residents of Will County.
When this is all over, when this election's over, I know that the friendship and the bonds, the relationships that were made are going to be lasting and do some really good work.
The presidential election is November 3rd, but don't worry, it's not too late to vote. Early voting ends November 2nd, but dates may differ depending on where you live. You can even register and vote on the day of the election. You can register to vote in person during a grace period, where you can register to vote at your local election office or other facilities providing voting, including the Spanish Community Center in downtown Joliet. The grace period began on October 7th and continues up to the day of the election. For LUTN, I'm Frank Panos.
Great job on that, Frank. Thank you so much for that story. Very good to encourage as much voter turnout and civic engagement as possible in this very polarizing election. We're going to have another map update right now as we continue to approach some poll closings on the West Coast. By 9:30, 10 o'clock, we should expect states like Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada for those polls to close very soon. But right now, polls holding pretty steady across the Midwest and in the Sun Belt states.
Yep, so our map actually updated. Joe Biden is still at 131. Donald Trump did go up to 108. We are seeing in Arizona, Biden is in the lead with 53.7%. In Utah, Donald Trump is in the lead with 55%. As well as in Montana, we have Joe Biden leading with 54.7%.
Yeah, and we'll continue. Those states like Montana, Wyoming, Utah, those polls just opening right now, so very early results from there, of course. The West Coast, we can expect states like Washington, Oregon, California, we can all expect those in all likelihood to fall into the category of Joe Biden, which once again leaves the importance of these swing states on the East Coast, which are still very close, but are still very far from being decided. Right now, we're going to take a quick break, though. We thank all of you who have been joining us on LUTN's election night coverage. We'll be right back with more. I'll be talking with Dr. Nora on the other side. Stay tuned.
Jordan knows he shouldn't eat this entire bowl of nachos, but tonight he's earned that right. Because a few hours ago, in the middle of happy hour, he recognized a sign. Not from the gods or a bolt of lightning, but from a double heart, a kissy face, and a fourth ha in ha ha ha. That's when Jordan knew he was buzzed. So when it was time to go, he got a ride home instead of driving. Be a legend like Jordan. Recognize your buzzed warning signs and get a ride home. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
If I could go back and change it all, I would. I think I'm gonna miss you the most. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Or maybe it's just the little moments. If I could go back and change it all. If I could go back, I would. But I can't.
So, I got this new family, and I don't know what it is about this one, but she can't seem to put down that toy all day long. Tap, 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 tap. Oh, and she even talks to it. She talks to that more than she talks to him. What's up, bro? Nice shirt. Who's she talking to? Her mom? She talks to her mom a lot.
LUTN's election night coverage. One of the big subjects for debate has been how the polls have been, how in the last election in 2016, how the polls going into the elections showed such a large lead for Clinton, and then Trump closed the gap on the actual election day. We've seen some of the same things here today. To explain just how that may happen, why the polling numbers may be a little bit inaccurate, what margin of error means, all those key terms, we're going to throw it back to Dr. Stephen Nora once again on an explanation of polls and margin of error.
The margins of errors that are reported in the polls, if you see a poll, the margin of error is basically the sampling error. So if you think back just to what a poll actually is, you're taking from the general population a random group of 500, 1,000, 2,000 people. And from the characteristics of that random sample that you pull out, you are going to try to infer what the larger population says, okay? And so using statistics and probability, researchers can actually, with precision, tell you the likelihood of your results varying from the true results in the population. And that's what we call the margin of error. The margin of error is basically the probability that your poll will be within X percentage points with 95% confidence. So if you see a poll that says, let's say, just for simplicity's sake, Biden 50%, Trump 45% with a margin of error of plus or minus 3. The way you can interpret that is that the researcher can be 95% sure, or 95 times out of 100, that Joe Biden's 50% in the poll will be within 3 points of that in the population. And Donald Trump's 45% in that poll would be within 3 points. So what you end up being able to do is constructing a confidence interval around each of the candidates if you add and subtract 3 points from their score. And that range then tells you the likelihood of an event occurring 95% of the time. And so if a lot of polls have margins of error of about 3 percentage points, and so getting a result that's 6 percentage points off isn't that unusual. I mean, it can happen, and even if, so if you assume that one candidate's estimation was overestimated by 3 points, another candidate's estimation was underestimated by 3 points, that gets you your 6% right there. So it can happen. And even then, using the statistics, 5 times out of 100, you're going to get a result outside of that range. So, if I told you, if I had 20 jelly beans in a jar and one of them was poison, you wouldn't eat any of the jelly beans. And so the likelihood of one poll being off is high, to some extent.
Thank you for that piece on polling and margin of error. These bits of information are crucial to know with such a historical election like this. Now we're going to toss it back to Angel for social media.
Thank you so much, Margarita. Keeping it on the positive outcomes of this election, we have seen a tremendous amount of turnout, both early voting, mail-in voting, and even just on election day. Here we have featured a picture that the United Center shared, reminding voters earlier on the day that to retweet the photo and to show support for people coming out to this early to this supercenter election polling place in Chicago. I know I saw some coverage on it earlier, and there was a line around the whole building. So like I said, focusing on some positive stuff about the election, a very tremendous amount of voter turnout. Here both in Illinois and around the country. And more dogs, everyone loves dogs. Speaking of dogs, these are a bunch of huskies reminding us to breathe. No matter where we're at, states like Georgia that have not been totally called yet, Pennsylvania, states across the country that are still waiting for results to be solid. We might be waiting a couple days, for sure, a couple more hours for those margins of errors to be ironed out. So, and another reminder, another very important aspect of this 2020 election, unprecedented, of course, but we do want to remind our viewers, and this Twitter user wants to remind us that the women vote. This year marks 100 years since women had been given the right to vote by the Supreme Court. So just a reminder, #VoteTwenty20, where people are sharing some really positive messages and encouraging voters and reminding voters that this is a very, very important election in a various amount of aspects. So now we're going to go back to some map coverage of the electoral map back at the desk.
Yeah, thank you for that, Angel. Before we do the map update, I just wanted to say how awesome it is to have a little bit of history, 100 years that women have had the right to vote, and great to see some dogs also. Those were some very good, high-quality dogs up there.
We
100%.
love our furry friends.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to have a little bit of a map update right now. Things holding pretty steady in a lot of the key swing states. You look at the electoral map right there. The key number to watch on top, that is currently a projected total of the electoral vote, projected 131 to 108. What we do know solidly right now that CNN is reporting that Joe Biden has a 98 to 95 lead in the electoral vote right now. But staying on swing states like Pennsylvania, Trump leading Pennsylvania, but still only 30% of the electorate in Pennsylvania, only 37 reporting in Wisconsin. Two very important states for Donald Trump. You go down to Florida, though, Trump's still leading by 4% by 4% in Florida, with 94% reporting. And the most recent state to be called was Utah on the West Coast. That will go to Donald Trump. CNN is reporting that Donald Trump has won Utah and the 6 electoral votes, and that brings us to the 98-95 total. Obviously, 270 needed to win. So obviously, it's been very important to keep a look. Trump leading in North Carolina, but still we're waiting on a lot of results from the key swing states like Pennsylvania and Ohio.
Yep, right now in New Hampshire, we're seeing a 53.3%. North Carolina, we're at 50%. Ohio, 52.7% for Trump. Pennsylvania, 54.3% for Trump. Texas with 51.3% for Trump, and Wisconsin at a 51.1%.
We're hearing right now that we are going to be joined again by Professor Schwinn from the University of Illinois, Chicago. Professor Schwinn, thank you so much for coming back on. I appreciate you being so informative with us tonight. I guess the question right now, you see leads in key states for Trump, like key leads for Trump in states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, but only very small number of the precincts reporting there. So should we expect maybe a shift in the dynamic in those important states like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin?
I think we certainly may expect a shift. So Pennsylvania is not going to report its mail-in ballots tonight. Wisconsin in Milwaukee will not produce numbers until much later. And so these are areas where we expect Biden to gain some votes, perhaps significant votes. And so I think it's going to be a long night, maybe a long couple of days for Pennsylvania and Wisconsin.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard so much from a lot of people. There's been a lot of hype building up on both sides about the importance of this election. Where do you think this election ranks? I know you're not a history professor, but where do you think this election ranks in terms of the importance of this election in the overall history of the United States?
Yeah, overall, it's hard to say because in some ways it's apples and oranges. I mean, we've had some really tough elections and some really tough issues in our country's history, as we all know. But I've got to say, certainly in recent history, this is by far the most important election. Certainly in my lifetime, and likely well into the future as well. And the reason why is because, as we talked about last hour, President Trump has represented such a sea change in the way the administration governs and the issues that it takes on and the divisiveness in our country. It really is very, very different from anything that we've seen in recent memory. And so the country has a choice tonight. Do we validate that? The Trump administration, or do we decide that we're going to change course and go back? In some ways, kind of go back to sort of ordinary procedure in Washington. Although I think after the Trump administration, we'll probably never see an ordinary procedure in Washington again. This is a really important election.
So right now we are seeing a couple states flip-flopping between Democratic and Republican votes. Do you think that there will be any states that will surprise us with the outcome?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's hard to say. And I don't mean to sound wishy-washy about it, but we all knew going into the election that there were going to be, a half dozen or so real key swing states that we wanted to keep an eye on. And these states are turning out to be the swing states that we knew we would want to keep an eye on. So whether they go one way or the other, I'm not sure is going to be a huge surprise to anybody. We are seeing some positive Trump numbers in Michigan, which I've got to say is a little bit of a surprise to me. But then we don't have Wayne County, which includes Detroit, reporting a large number of votes yet. And so that may swing things back toward Biden. I'm a little surprised at Ohio. The early returns showed Biden with really strong numbers in Ohio. I'm not sure that we anticipated Ohio being the swing state that it appears to be in the actual number returns. And then states like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, where I think really we are going to have to wait some time to see what the votes say as they're coming in with numbers from early voting and in Wisconsin, numbers from Milwaukee. Florida, I understand the Biden team has all but conceded Florida at this point. It may be a surprise that Florida wasn't quite as competitive as many people thought that it would be. So I think maybe around the edges there could yet be some surprises, but we all knew that this was going to be a really tight election in those swing states.
So no matter who wins this election, what issues do you think are super important that no matter who wins, what do you think are issues that should be addressed?
Yeah, so I think there are a range of issues, and they, really everything. So everything from foreign relations to trade to environmental regulation to labor and employment regulation to the way government itself functions and whether we'll restore a kind of normalcy in the checks and balances and separation of power system that the Trump administration has significantly disrupted. I think all of that stuff is going to be on the table. And I like the way you posed the question. I think those things are going to be on the table whoever wins the election. If President Trump is reelected, I think we're going to see an acceleration in Trump policies across all of those areas, right? We'll see an acceleration and a kind of renewed aggressiveness in the area of foreign affairs and trade regulation. We'll see a renewed effort at scaling back on environmental regulation and protections of labor rights. And we'll see, I think, a renewed and rejuvenated effort to interrupt and really, in some ways, destroy some really key features of our democracy in terms of checks and balances and separation of powers. On the other side, if Biden wins, and we see a President Biden, I think, is going to see his mandate as trying to restore some normalcy in Washington and some normalcy in our international relations, our trade relations, to reinvigorate environmental regulations and put a new emphasis on environmental regulation and environmental protection, a renewed emphasis on civil rights and worker rights. And what I would hope to see from a President Biden is a renewed respect for the separation of powers and for the checks and balances that are built into our system. So I really do think, this, again, just kind of coming back to this theme, it really is a very important election. We voters tonight have a decision to make. Do we want more of the Trump administration in an accelerated kind of way, or do we want a return to normalcy and different values from the White House?
Thank you, Professor Schwinn. We really appreciate your insight. So now we're going to go to commercial break. Stay tuned for a senior forum when we return.
Maybe he's really focused.
Hey, Michael. Maybe he likes spinning the wheels.
Maybe he just loves trucks.
Maybe he's just being a boy.
Preoccupation with objects is one early sign of autism. Learn the others today. The sooner it's diagnosed, the better.
So, I got this new family, and I don't know what it is about this one, but she can't seem to put down that toy all day long. Tap, 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 tap. Oh, and she even talks to it. She talks to that more than she talks to him. What's up, bro? Nice shirt. Who's she talking to? Her mom? She talks to her mom a lot.
LUTN's 2020 election night coverage. Generation Z has made their voices heard throughout social media, encouraging young voters everywhere to get to the polls and vote. We forget that there have been generations before us who have seen more hectic times and are seasoned pros when it comes to elections and the outcomes of politics. Right now, we're going to swing it over to a senior forum. Our reporter Maya Lloyd is live talking to some seniors about their opinions about the 2020 election.
Thank you, everyone. Nice to meet you all. So we're going to kick this off with our first question. How did this election differ from previous elections?
I feel like we're going fast.
Well, I think there's an awful lot of animosity. And it seems like the country is divided. It's either one side or the other side. And it's really sad to see because it's very uncomfortable. For it's something I don't want to pass on to my grandchildren. I feel terrible about the situation because there's so much ugliness everywhere on both sides. I'm not just saying it's only one side, but on both sides. But the name calling and it's awful for these young people to be seeing and thinking that's okay because it's bullying. That's my opinion.
Thank you for your answer.
I agree with Ms. Golden. This is Cheryl Stampley Thomas. The problems have been there all along for a long time in this country. But I think Donald Trump has brought some things to the surface that as a country, we haven't really dealt with very good. And what I'm talking about is racism and classism and disrespecting the disabled population. It's just brought a lot of things to the forefront that we as a country really need to deal with. Also, acknowledging that there's history in this country that has not been discussed, that is reluctant to be discussed. And again, maybe I have to give kudos to Donald Trump for bringing that to our awareness, but it should have been done way before now, but it's brought to a head. In the first debate when Biden or the commentator asked Donald Trump to talk about white supremacists, Donald Trump didn't know how to refer to them, but then he, referred to them as Patriot boys. So he knows something about him being not able to speak for the majority of the country. And I cautiously say majority of the country.
I think it is the majority.
Leaves a lot that needs to be discussed. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Stampley. Mr. Stampley?
Yeah, this is Jan Stampley. So having lived through the early days of the civil rights movement in the 1950s and 1960s, I came of age in 1968. I was 21 years old. And that was a very tumultuous time. I mean, there was the Vietnam War that was raging, protests against the Vietnam War. That was the year that Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. Robert Kennedy was assassinated. There was a lot going on at that time. And when the presidential election came up, and I believe Richard Nixon was running, and George Wallace was running, he was governor of Alabama, an open segregationist. there was a lot of racial divide. There was a lot of divide among voters as to who should come into office. Lyndon Johnson at that time decided he wasn't going to run for another term. So a lot of stuff was up in the air, and there was a lot of division on both sides, Democrats, Republicans. And I know for you young millennials and Generation Zs and all that, you didn't live through that. So that was a very, very chaotic time, the way these times may seem to you.
I agree.
I guess one of the biggest things that I see at this time is that we have a sitting president who doesn't hesitate to call people names, his political opponents. He mocks people, he makes fun of people. And I think that's pretty much unheard of in my lifetime during any presidential election or presidential campaign. Well, that's been very disappointing as well to me.
Ms. Golden, Mr. Stampley, you all have mentioned name calling. Do you feel that past elections have had more mudslinging than the upcoming election?
I don't. I feel this has been the worst. Because it's named, I mean, he has President Trump has a nasty nickname for everybody he doesn't like. Sleepy Joe, you know, something about Kamala Harris. I mean, he's got it comes right off and it's teaching our children bullying, because that is bullying, and that's what we're trying to teach our children not to do. And it's coming from the head of the whole of the country. I mean, I find it very frightening that the young people have to listen to this. I really do. It really upsets me, because you know, their minds are being formed now, and we can say as much as we want to them, but they're hearing the other stuff too. And to me, it's very frightening, because I think our country's going in the wrong way. I mean, we're showing hatred for each other. That's terrible.
Thank you.
I agree with Ms. Golden that we are in a bullying society. But I'm also getting the sense that we're in a society where certain populations are expendable. If you're poor, if you're lack education, if you don't have job skills, then it's like maybe you'll die off and you won't be a burden to society. And where the rich or those with more resources will flourish and make the decisions. And that's scary, because everybody's life is important. Everybody should be considered equal. You know, just because you have more money or better job or more income does not make you any better than anybody else. And our president, who is definitely a very capitalistic person, I mean, he's for profit, where he believes that it's okay to step on other people to get what you want, to make that dollar more. It's okay. And that's not, I don't think well, it is the American way, because that's how this country was started, was through a capitalistic perspective. But we need to change that. Whoever the president is needs to be for everybody, not just for the rich.
Thank you. So then we're gonna go on to our next question. Do you think that political campaigns are more effective now or in past elections?
Elections just last way, way, way too long. And people get tired of it. They get tired of hearing the same garbage over and over, the same lies over and over, the mudslinging, the name calling. And I think that deters people from even being involved in the election. It deters people from even wanting to know anything about the candidates. You just get so tired of it. And so I think the elections, I agree, the campaigning needs to be a much, much, much shorter period. And they need to stick with the facts and not all this other garbage that they keep throwing in there. So that's my view on that.
Well, social media has brought a lot of that too. They can say such nasty things on social media, and people pick it up. I mean, all the theories that people have come up with, which are untrue and not, you know, and they get on to social media, and young people pick them up. Older people do too. It's not only the young people, but people pick them up and start believing them, and where there's no truth to them. It used to be that somebody would fact check them and they couldn't get away with it. But nowadays they get away with everything. So I find it scary.
One other thing I like to add to that is that I think in times past, I think that there were always, all reporters, journalists put a slant on the news that they report. I think you could still find some quarters in the past, say, where there was some more honest and balanced news reporting from some quarters. Nowadays, it seems that you can't find that at all. I tend to read news from both sides of the aisle. I read Republican and Democratic websites and get my news from there to try to balance it myself to figure out what I think is correct. But I think more so than ever, we have skewed news reporting.
I agree. Absolutely. I mean, there's certain channels that we all know goes one way, and other channels that was never like that before. The channels gave you both sides, and it was up to you to make up your mind. We don't have that. I mean, well, you can still make up your mind, but if you just listen to one channel, it's so skewed in one direction. It's bad.
That's interesting that you all feel that way. What was your reaction to this election's presidential debates?
Well, the first one was an absolute disaster. I mean, it was embarrassing. It was horrible. The second one, at least, was a little better. And you did get some information out of the second one, but still not a whole lot. I mean, a lot of it was campaigning. And I don't know. I really feel like we didn't find out at all what President Trump is going to do in his second term. He never said anything. They asked him about a second term, and he went on to he started telling us all the wonderful things he had done again. Well, we need to know what's going to happen in the future. We already know what happened in the past, so it was better. It was better. I liked the town halls. I thought the town hall was good. I thought that was much better because it was one-on-one, and there wasn't that constant interrupting. And although it wasn't as bad the second debate. But.
Thank you, Ms. Golden. Anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, I agree again with Ms. Golden. The first debate was an embarrassment to this country. It really took us to a low level that I'm not sure if we're going to ever recover from that, or it would be a while before we do recover from it. I get the impression that Donald Trump wants to create a dictatorship. When he is pressed for about if he does not win, and turning over the White House to the next person, and then fighting it, and saying that the mail-in ballots are going to be defective in some kind of way, and all this other stuff. It's taken this country in a direction away from democracy, and that really concerns me. I can understand having debates and all that, but maybe we should limit the number of candidates, if that's possible, running for the office or running for the political party, so we have a little more manageability with the process, and that it can keep people's interests, and that it's addressed in a way where everybody can understand what's being discussed. I think that would really help. But right now, the process is kind of convoluted, and it's kind of going in a direction that we're not quite sure just what direction it's going in, but that's my 2 cents.
Well, the fact that we had to have a discussion even of muting the mics, and in fact had to actually mute the mics on both candidates, says a lot about the chaos that's going on in terms of this current presidential debate.
And it's what we don't need at this time is more chaos. I mean, our lives are chaotic enough.
Right.
Yeah.
And with this COVID, I mean, it's just everybody's in so tense anyway. And then to have more stuff added on like that, it's really sad. I mean, we need something uplifting. We need someone to tell us good things they're going to do.
Do you think that this election has focused on the issues at hand in our nation?
Not really. It's focused on, it's focused on a few of them, but not, there's so much that needs to be done. And they're both parties are skirting the issues. I mean, there's a lot to be done with this racism thing. I mean, but first of all, you have to get people to admit that there is racism, and that at the top is kind of difficult to do. So,
yeah, I agree with you. Racism, immigration situation, education, housing, classism, the Supreme Court nominee. There's so many issues. It'd be nice if we had candidates who were supportive that yes, global warming is occurring. We do have a problem. You know, we need to, what direction as a country can we go in order to rectify some of the severe storms that we've been having in the last few years? For that matter, wearing masks or not. I mean, why should be left up to each state when the virus is in every state? So, you know, it'd be nice if we could have some common ground on some issues, some important issues. What are we going to do with people who are homeless? How are we going to fund programs that people need in order to survive? What are we going to do about job training and jobs, creating more jobs? It'd be nice if everybody, if we could have some kind of agreement, at least majority agreement. But right now we got so many different factions going in so many different directions. It's not going to be addressed. Having people who are knowledgeable to run different areas of the country is real important. Not going through a litany of people who are being fired because the current president did not like their personality or didn't like what they say or whatever. You know, that's ridiculous. Dr. Fauci has done an outstanding job, but yet the president has tried to minimize all of his efforts. That's not going to get us anywhere. You know, like the problem is still there. What are we going to do as a country to address it? There's still people dying every day. And this is the United States of America. It's supposed to be the best economy in the world. What's happening here? We're just going in so many different directions.
They aren't addressing the issues. That's the whole thing.
But why not? I mean,
well, that's not the question. The question is, do you think the issues are being addressed? And you said, no, they're not being addressed.
They're not.
Yeah, they're not.
Thank you for your answer, Ms. Golden and Ms. Cheryl Stampley. So what do you feel the results will be from this election? Do you all have any opinions on that?
Oh, yeah. If it goes in Trump's direction, then the Biden folks are gonna continue to protest. If it goes in Biden's direction, then the Trump folks are gonna probably protest. So either way, we're probably gonna have protests. So, you know.
Okay, that leads me into my next and probably biggest question of the interview of the year on everybody's minds. How do you think that COVID-19 has affected this election year?
I think that I think it has affected it a lot because I think that there were a lot of people who were going in one direction, in one camp, but now since there have been so many cases, so many deaths, so many businesses going out of business because they keep having to close them, I think families are fed up with this remote learning stuff. And I think they kind of blame that on the current presidency, you know, that this is all because the government or the presidency didn't do what they were supposed to do. I don't know if that's true or not, but I know regardless of what the problem was in the beginning, it has taken a big toll on people. And I think some people might have changed camps because of that. So we'll see.
Anyone else have an opinion?
Yeah, last week 60 Minutes did a documentary on how COVID kind of began to start spreading in the United States. People were on a cruise ship, got some kind of way they got infected. They were airlifted to, I believe it was New York airport, one of the airports in New York. And then they were allowed to disperse. And that's how there were people dropping on the plane and this is just now coming out. This happened months ago. So a lot of this begins we start looking for guidance at the top, of course, with the president and NIH and all this, why it wasn't nipped in the bud early on when the folks got off the plane in New York or New Jersey, whatever airport that was in the Northeast, why it wasn't handled better then, because the germ theory has been around for a long time, and we know how things are spread. So why it wasn't interventions done then, where it wouldn't have gone, across the country by people who may or may not have been infected at that time or tested positive. But fast track to the present, we need more testing, we need more interventions, we need, for sure, people.
The elections, what she's asking.
Well, it's affected every aspect of our life. It's going to affect Thanksgiving. It's going to affect
Christmas,
the turnout for the voting. And then when we're told that don't mail in your ballots because that's going to be mishandled in some kind of way. So what are we to do? We just don't have good guidance, honest guidance about what we need to do and what direction we need to go in. So yes, it has affected every aspect, even just going to the store and buying groceries. You got to wear a mask. And this is serious. There are a lot of people have died and will continue to die if we don't change our ways.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Stampley.
I think it's definitely going to affect the turnout for the election because the way President Trump has kind of played it down. I think a lot of his supporters will be more encouraged to go to the polls, whereas maybe some of Biden's supporters will be encouraged not to go and maybe rely more on the mail-in vote. So I think it's definitely going to have an impact. How it's going to ultimately turn out is anybody's guess.
Well, I'm really glad that people are standing in lines now to vote, and many of them are Biden supporters. And there's still going to be a fair number who are going to actually show up and vote on, was it November 3rd? But those who are waiting 5, 6, 7, 8 hours in line now in the heat or in the rain or in the cold, this is serious. This is going to be our future for the next 4 years and then some, if we can undo what has been happening for the last 4 years. But I think there's already a fantastic turnout. I just hope more, if not everybody who can vote, do vote.
Can you all recall what your first experience voting was like?
That was so long ago, I don't even remember.
I don't remember the first time I voted.
Okay. I do remember I said, is this it? This is all you gotta do? I do remember that thinking.
Like that,
Yeah, I think I first voted in the 1972 presidential election, which was Richard Nixon and Eugene McCarthy. McGovern. Yeah. And, there was a lot of divide at that time. And, again, the Vietnam War was raging. And I think a lot of people wanted to get Nixon out for that very reason. So I probably voted Democratic at the time. But ultimately, Nixon did win that election.
The first election I ever voted in, back when I voted, you had to be 21 to vote. So I had just turned 21 and it was time to vote for the president, which was exciting because it was Jack Kennedy that was running. And he had come, I was at Marquette University at the time, and he came and spoke there. He walked right down the aisle. I could have reached out and touched him because I was on the end of the aisle. And he just had a way he had such charisma that, you actually thought, oh, wow, he's Mr. Wonderful. But the one thing he did when he got into the presidency is he chose the best people around, no matter what party they were, to come ahead and head every group. He didn't care whether they loved him, whether they, were going to do everything he said. He chose somebody who was smart and knew how, and it was a wonderful, it really was good for the country. But unfortunately, that hasn't happened this time. We're putting people in heads of organizations that don't know the first thing about what they're doing, and it's tragic. I mean, we've lost so much with this whole thing. It just upsets me, but anyway, you know, years ago, you had to be 21 to vote. It wasn't until 1971 that they passed the 26th Amendment so that 18-year-olds could vote. And the reason they put that through is we were sending young men off to war in Vietnam when they were 18, and we weren't allowing them to vote. And so that's when that went through. So that was in 1971. I think it was July of 71 when it was finally went through. And it was an amendment. It had to be an amendment to the Constitution. And it was the fastest change to the Constitution that has ever happened. It really went fast. Because everybody agreed with it. Why are we sending young people off and telling them, oh, no, you can't even vote for the president or vote for anybody? It was crazy.
So it's been a big topic with the young people that their vote doesn't count. And this year, I think social media and every media outlet has really encouraged young people to go and vote, especially if this is the year that they're legal. Do you all think everyone's vote counts?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you see how close some elections are, and I think last time a lot of people sat home because they got complacent.
That's right.
And hope this time there's not as much complacency. I mean, you're either on one side or you're on the other,
Right.
but at least people are voicing their opinion,
Right.
which is what democracy is about. And you know, we all, you know, individually we all hope something goes the way we like it, but it doesn't always do that. But I definitely think every vote, they keep telling everybody every vote counts, and I think they're really pitched towards the young people who really normally don't come out for elections. I think there's more of them going to come out this year than ever. I hope.
Agreed.
Yeah, I do think that every vote counts. There's some people that don't think that every vote counts because of the way it does, but I think the individual votes count, even though the final verdict is by the Electoral College, but I think that is influenced by the individual votes.
Yeah, I have some real concerns about the Electoral College.
Yeah.
I want to know who makes up it. I want to see the pictures of the folks who make up the Electoral College, because it's all been a mystery for the longest. I mean, does anyone know anybody who's on the Electoral College?
I'm not sure, Ms. Stampley.
Huh?
So let's go into our next question, though. As Ms. Golden had mentioned earlier, voting has changed with age. What about any other changes have occurred?
Well, the way we vote has changed. When I first voted, it was just a little piece of paper that you got and you marked it off and you gave it to the person. There were no computers. There was nothing that was, you know, that took your vote and put it right in like there is now. And now you get the option of, going one way or the other. I mean, there's been so many changes with technology and everything, and they still offer the options of voting with the paper if you want it. This year, with all the judges and everything that you have to elect, it's hard to go through them all. But anyway, it's something we should do, because judges are important.
Yeah. Yeah, I think our technology is important and it's good, but it'd be nice if we had one process of voting, you know, whether it be mail-in or in person. Each state seems to have its own system of voting. And if you remember not that long ago with the election with the hanging chads in Florida, I mean,
horrible.
What a mess. What a mess. So we need to have some consistency and again, some guidance from the federal government regarding how voting is to be done. And every state should be consistent. I mean, it shouldn't be different for Indiana versus Illinois versus Michigan versus Missouri or wherever. It should be consistent.
And I don't think that we're going to get the final answer as to who's president the night of the, the night of the election, if you want the truth. I think there's going to be a lot of counting afterwards because there are so many mail-in ballots, and each state has a different rule as to how long they can count those ballots too. Illinois is very liberal. I mean, I think they can count them up until 11 days after the election or something like that.
There's several
And
states that are like that.
as long as it's postmarked by the day of the election. So there, in other states, it has to be there by the day of the election. So there needs to be some continuity with those things. So it's going to be an interesting election.
Sure will.
Yeah,
sure will. And my research on Electoral College is that they actually cast their final votes sometime in December anyway.
Yeah.
So maybe on the night of the election, a winner will be announced of the popular vote, but the actual electoral vote, which is what really counts, won't be announced, won't be official until later.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the last two elections, the person who, or the last election specifically, I mean, Hillary Clinton had the
Right.
big numbers, but she didn't have the Electoral College. So,
Right.
I mean, that's huge. And maybe we should, maybe it's time to address that with our legislature too, and maybe change the Electoral College because it doesn't seem to be as equitable as it used to be.
Yeah.
But that's
Thank you,
something
everyone, for your answers. Let's go into our last and final question. What advice can you each give first-time voters in this election?
Go vote.
Yeah, vote.
Do some research, do some critical thinking about what the issues are and what the candidates represent or don't represent. And consider how you want to see this country, what direction you want this country to go in the next 4, 8, 20 years, and so on. Just be mindful, be aware of what's going on in society and where you fit into it and what you can do in order to solve some of the problems.
I agree with her completely. And it's going to influence their lives a lot more than my life or even your lives, because, they've got their whole future ahead of them. So it's really important for them to get the right person and to make our country improve from what it is right now. But all we can do is we can vote and just hope that everybody else does.
Right, right.
Yeah, exercise that right that some people have given up their lives for us to have that right.
Thank you all. That's all the time we have. Thank you for participating in our panel. We appreciate your knowledge. We had so much fun getting your perspectives and opinions on this year's election. Reporting from LUTN, I'm Lloyd.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you so much to Lloyd for running that little town hall discussion with a few of the grandparents of some of our staff here at LUTN. Some great stuff, great information about, especially with the coronavirus affecting seniors at such a greater rate. We think of coronavirus, some people, young, healthy people may not think that it affects them as much, but senior citizens, those with prior health complications, do have to take extra precautions. It's also very interesting how Joe Biden has really dominated the extremes of the spectrum, and it seems that senior citizens and a lot younger voters tend to vote for Joe Biden. So it's very, very important and interesting information from that town hall.
Every vote counts. LUTN reporter Lloyd talked to DuPage County Forest Preserve President Dan Hebriard about how every vote was so crucial in his win in 2016.
As the elections draw near, the big question on everyone's lips is, are you voting? While many believe their vote doesn't count, the president of the DuPage County Forest Preserve, Dan Hebrard, shares his story on how every vote absolutely counts.
So 2,400 signatures were turned in. My opponent, having no primary, myself having no primary, would seemingly be set for the election. However, he did attempt to kick me off the ballot 3 times through the Election Commission, through Circuit Court, and then through Appellate Court.
Before Hebrard's appointment as the president of the DuPage County Forest Preserve, there has only been one other Democrat candidate elected countywide in DuPage in the 1930s for this position.
On election night, I was up early. The early voting and the mail-in had favored most Democrats, including myself. And as the day of the day of numbers came in, unfortunately, I started to fall behind. I was behind on election night by about 10 o'clock at night, and I ended up about 3,500 votes short. Over the next 2 weeks, however, what the Election Commission does is they count all of the absentee ballots, all of the mail-in ballots that were dated the night or the day of the election, and also any provisional ballots that have then been validated to be accurate. And we did get hundreds more to count, and I pulled ahead on Monday, November 19th, and I won the election on the 20th of November, and I won by 702.
As Hebrard's story illustrates, every vote is important in democracy. We spoke with the first-time voter in this year's election.
This is the first time I'm able to vote because of meeting the age requirement. I feel that I could make a difference in who I elect anywhere from the president to senators, representatives, pretty much down ballot candidates. So overall, my reason is I want change in our government.
Obviously, someone who just ran in the last cycle, 2018, and as someone who won a very close election, I will tell you that people just like you, people just like me, are running, are trying to make improvements in this country from every level, from the top to the bottom, and it really does make a difference.
Reporting from LUTN News, this is Lloyd.
Thank you, Mayette, for that. Like you said, voting is super important, and our votes do count. Every vote does count.
Yeah, a lot of these state races are very close, and every single vote does count. And it was very interesting, Mr. Hebrard and his explanation of why some of these results are taking so long, because there's so much verification processes that go into checking all these absentee ballots. Right now, though, we're going to swing it back over to Angel Olivo. He's got another social update for us. Angel?
So we've been looking at some states, some legislation that has been on some ballots across the United States. Notably, Florida is claiming victory for an amendment that will raise the minimum wage to $15 in that state. I know that has a lot of people happy, especially with coronavirus affecting a lot of the economy. We saw earlier that the economy is #1 in top issues in some states for key issues that people are looking for in this election. So just as a reminder to keep an eye on local elections, legislation initiatives here in Illinois and across the United States to get some insight on how people are feeling aside from the presidential election. I know some of us, the presidential elections has us a little anxious, but there are other areas to look at and to feel good about as we continue our coverage of tonight's election. We're noticing that just about most states are closing their polls. I believe all states have just closed their polls at this point. So the anxieties are still very high. Just a reminder, breathe, get a good night's rest. Tomorrow, look at the polls again. This will be an ongoing thing. It is a marathon, not a sprint to the finish. So that's the beauty of democracy, that every vote is being counted now. So that's going to take some time, for sure. Similarly, here in here in Will County, as well as DuPage County and Cook County, have seen record number of voter turnout. People citing hope and purpose as the reason why they came out today to vote. One of the most positive things we're seeing out of this election is the amount of people that are turning out to vote. Regardless of how the election goes, a key part of this democracy is that we all participate. So we are seeing that in the southwest suburbs here in Illinois and across the nation. So something to smile about as you rest your head tonight. With an unsure picture, without a clear, cohesive picture of how this election will turn out. So, that's just some of the coverage that we're reporting on from Twitter. We're going to go back to the desk for an update. Back to you, Matt and Margarita.
Thank you, Angel, for that. I find it awesome that Florida is trying to raise their minimum wage to $15 for their residents and help them make a more livable wage.
Yeah, absolutely. It is great to see that. The President Trump and President Biden have been both a little bit divided on that. President Biden wanting to establish, $15 minimum wage nationally. Donald Trump seems like he wants to leave it up more to the states and have it, have their decision ultimately take precedence over what their minimum wage is going to be. Right now, though, we're going to have another map update. We're going to take a look at how things are shaping up right now. We did have some poll closings recently on the West Coast. States like Washington, Oregon, California, as expected, winding up in the Joe Biden camp right now. The projected total, as you can see up top, is 209 to 118 in favor of Joe Biden. The CNN projection right now leaves Joe Biden at 192 electoral votes to Trump's 114. Key state to watch on the East Coast, Virginia is looking to continue to flip-flop back and forth. It was earlier in the night that Donald Trump seemed like he was leading there, and now that the lead has swung back in the other direction, it seems we may have reached our cap on what we're going to figure out in terms of Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin here tonight. Trump leading those currently, but still a large influx of mail-in votes to decide those elections. Trump probably going to need to, in order to win, Trump probably will need to win 2 of the 3 states between Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So those are very crucial races to keep an eye on right now as we progress throughout this evening. But right now, as I mentioned, the West Coast, California, 55 electoral votes going in favor of Joe Biden, and Texas also has been surprisingly close for what Texas usually is. It's a 52 to 46% lead for Donald Trump in Texas. Joe Biden keeping things surprisingly close. It does look on the East Coast, though, that Florida, Georgia, even North Carolina, those states do seem like they're going to go in favor of Donald Trump when all the votes are counted in those states. So,
yeah, like you said, on the West Coast, Biden is really dominating. In Washington right now, he has it's projected a 60.8% lead. Oregon right now, we're looking at a 59.3% with Joe Biden, and in California, a 69.9% with Donald Trump leading behind with 28.4%. Now, these are projections.
Yeah, and a lot of you may be wondering what are some of the key issues that matter, because it seems like this election is coming down to, and it's true that this election is kind of just coming down to just a few states like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan. These key swing states will decide, seem like they will decide the outcome of the election. I talked to Dr. Nora last week to describe kind of the similarities and differences between people who live in these swing states as opposed to people that we know in Illinois. Here's Dr. Nora on his opinion on how these swing states and the people who voting in these states will turn out.
I mean, I would like to just kind of say that these voters in swing states are just like voters in Illinois by and large, and they're different, but they're going to care about the same things, right? Coronavirus is going to be on the top of everyone's mind. The economy is going to be on the top of everyone's mind. And there might be some niche issues that are more likely to be important in Pennsylvania than in Illinois. Fracking and energy, for example, might be of higher importance. If you live in Florida, you might care more about environmentalism or offshore drilling or Cuba policy, but by and large, we are all Americans, and there are differences across cultures and regions, but it's probably the same things that are important to people like us here in Illinois.
Yeah, it's an interesting comment there from Dr. Nora that even though they get labeled as swing states, a lot of those citizens are very similar to the people that live here in Illinois, Will County, and the surrounding area. So it's a very interesting insight by Dr. Nora there, and we'll see how kind of the attitudes about how to progress following this election, whether the voters in these swing states want to reopen the economy or whether they think that it should be the priority of the nation to contain the virus. I guess we'll see the decisions of those voters, what they think the best way is to continue in these coming months as we try to deal with the coronavirus.
Yeah, definitely, especially with some of these states flip-flopping. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to take a quick break once again. I want to thank you for tuning in to LUTN Election Night coverage. We'll be right back on the other side. We'll have another map update. We'll get you all updated with our election coverage. Stay tuned. I don't even think we have a map update.
Jordan knows he shouldn't eat this entire bowl of nachos, but tonight he's earned that right. Because a few hours ago, in the middle of happy hour, he recognized a sign. Not from the gods or a bolt of lightning, but from a double heart, a kissy face, and a fourth ha in ha ha ha. That's when Jordan knew he was buzzed. So when it was time to go, he got a ride home instead of driving. Be a legend like Jordan. Recognize your buzzed warning signs and get a ride home. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
If I could go back and change it all, I would. I think I'm gonna miss you the most. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Or maybe it's just the little moments. If I could go back and change it all, if I could go back, I would. But I can't.
So, I got this new family, and I don't know what it is about this one, but she can't seem to put down that toy all day long. Tap, 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 tap. Oh, and she even talks to it. She talks to that more than she talks to him. What's up, bro? Nice shirt. Who's she talking to? Her mom? She talks to her mom a lot.
Welcome back to LUTN 2020 election coverage. As we look at the map, it seems like a lot of the races in the key states are starting to stabilize, and it doesn't seem like we'll have any information about those for probably for the rest of the night into tomorrow. So with that, we will most likely wrap up our coverage, but we want to thank all of you for joining us on the LUTN 2020 election coverage. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to, again, say thank you to everyone who has helped with the voting process. We know Jada Hoffman tonight served as an election judge, so I just want to say thank you. And thank you for watching this newscast.
Absolutely. Thank you to all our correspondents and staff. Have a great night, and God bless America.